My name is Jordan Sparks, External Vice President of the Game Makers Union, and welcome to Checkpoint, everyone. The Game Makers Union is, as many of you know, and perhaps some of you don't, is the game developing club at Ryerson. We are dedicated to making games, teaching people how to make games, as well as supporting them to make their own games. And that's what we wanted to do for all of our events. Checkpoint came about last year when we wanted to sort of make a big event that sort of connected students with the game development community at large. Because we realized when we were doing the club last few years ago that there was actually a huge game development community in Toronto that we were previously unaware about, and it was amazing. It's fantastic. It's unique. It's really passionate, and we wanted to not only be a part of that, but we wanted to sort of feature it and make it and give a connection to that community with our members. We also want to connect to the professional community, and that's how Checkpoint was born last year when we did it for the first time. This year we have 3 great guest speakers. So we have Ryan Henson Creighton.
Yeah! Woo! Give it up for Ryan!
And we have Cecily Carver.
Yay!
These are our wonderful guest speakers this year, and I hope that you all enjoy them. I'm going to stop talking right now because of course, you didn't come here to see me. You came to see these wonderful guest speakers. So I'd like to introduce Cecily Carver as our first guest speaker of the night. Have at him. Oh, one more thing. We will be doing we'll be pulling raffle tickets after every speech. So for the first 3 speeches, it's going to be it's going to be the family discount card as the prizes, and then at the end of the night, we'll be raffling off a Nintendo 3DS XL and Legend of Zelda Between Worlds. So, floor is yours, Cecily.
I'm trying to figure out the optimal place to stand. The last talk I gave, I was standing right in front of the projector light without knowing that there were words projected on my face. So, okay, this looks good. There are no words on my face. Anyway, I'm Cecily Carver, and I co-run a group here in Toronto called Dames Making Games. And as you might guess from the name, we're a group that's primarily focused on building a community of game makers that is women-driven. It's not women only, but we're aiming to build a community that's about mutual support and skill building that is inclusive and welcoming. And there are a lot of things that we do. We have socials every month. They're free and they're open to everyone, and they feature usually between 3 and 5 presentations. We have game jams every couple of months. Do you all know what a game jam is? Yes? Okay, good. And we have workshops and a bunch of other things. So, Dames Making Games. I'm not going to talk too much about Dames Making Games tonight, but as part of Dames Making Games, I've watched a lot of people who are really excited about games attempt to make a game for the first time. And there are places where I notice that they're confused and they want guidance, and there are places where I notice that they trip up. So based on seeing lots of people work on games for the first time during Dames Making Games programs, I'm going to pass on that wisdom and experience to you. It's a talk that largely assumes that you are excited about games and you have ideas, and you've probably tooled around with some tools and some engines, but that you don't have a lot of experience taking a project from start to finish. If that's you, you can feel free to sit in the back and be like, I know all this already. Why is she telling me this? But I hope you'll find it a valuable refresher if that's the case. So this is often the experience of building something. And if you can't read it, it says, I fucking hate this, I hate everything. Wait, it's working now, I love all of you. If you've ever made a game before, you can probably identify quite a bit with this sentiment. And I want to say, you can make a game, even if you've never made one before, and even if you don't know how to code, and even if you can't draw. I put that last one in there because when I talk to people and say, hey, making games is actually a lot more accessible than you might think. Usually the first thing they say to me is like, oh, I'm not very confident with coding. Being able to draw, I think, is as difficult, if not more difficult, than knowing how to code, but people almost never say this to me. So I like to put that out there to kind of say that there are a lot of different skills that go into making a game. It's not just about programming computers. And you probably bring a skill to the table, even if you don't know how to code. So when you get started, there are a lot of questions you should be asking yourself. What am I interested in is a big one. What kind of games do I like? What kind of games do I wish that I could play that aren't being made? And what technical resources are available to me? Often this will mean, do I have access to a computer? Is it a Mac or a PC? Will GameMaker install on my computer or not? Will Stencil install on my computer or not? Do I have friends who know how to do X and Y? And I would also ask, what are your existing skills? Again, it's not only about coding. Games also need writers, they need illustrators, musicians, designers, people who do 3D modeling, design. And also think about what you want to learn. I meet people who say they want to learn how to code, but I also meet people who are mostly interested in being artists, being animators and illustrators, or writers. And if you don't want to learn how to code, there are tools available for you that will still help you make a game. But it's also good to know whether this is something you're interested in or something that you're not interested in. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Sometimes I worry that my voice doesn't carry very well.
It's a little bit louder, so we have to.
Sure. Yeah. So coding not being the only skill that matters is something I've already emphasized quite a bit. I also want to say that when it comes to a lot of the tools that I'm going to mention and that Ryan's going to mention later, a lot of them promote themselves as being no-code tools, meaning they have some kind of system for expressing logic that is almost coding but not quite. And sometimes people will struggle with these, and also if they want to learn how to code, they'll get really hung up on what language they should learn. But I would say it's actually most important to get to know logic flow concepts rather than coding, because even if a tool advertises itself as being no code, a lot of these concepts will come up in each of these tools under different names. So if you can see it and recognize, oh, this is their version of an if statement, or this is their version of a variable, then you'll be a lot farther along than a lot of other people. So if you're taking notes, you don't have to. These are some of the concepts that are most useful for you to learn if you're going to use a tool like GameMaker or GameSalad or whatever. So variables, if and else statements, Boolean logic, and loops. And if you understand those concepts, you'll be a lot further ahead of the game in any of these no-code tools. So here's some things you might want to try. This is from 2001, A Space Odyssey, depicting the moment when primates learned how to use tools. So we're moving past the phone. I like to group the various game-making tools into tools that are designed to make one specific kind of game, and tools that are designed to be more of a framework that allows you to make lots of different kind of games. So in the group of tools that do one thing, here are some that you might want to check out. Twine is really great if you're an absolute beginner. It lets you make interactive stories that are mostly text-based. And if you're comfortable with HTML and CSS, you can do some fancy things. And you can learn to use it in about 5 minutes. There's a reason it gets recommended a lot to beginners. There's RPG Maker for RPGs in the early 90s style. There's Adventure Game Studio, there's RenPy for visual novels, and there's Inform 7 for text adventures. For tools that are more open and flexible that do a bunch of things, you can check out any of these. GameSalad, GameMaker, Stencil, Construct2, and Unity. And I've basically put them in order of what I think is the learning curve for each of them. The one that's easiest to learn is probably GameSalad, and it's at the top. And the one that has the steepest learning curve is probably Unity. But generally, when you're trying to decide what tool to use to build your game, there's a trade-off. And it usually means fast and efficient versus flexible and powerful. If your game falls into the category of games covered by the tools that do one thing, they'll basically be already set up
So
to-
sorry.
Who invited that guy? So yeah, fast and easy versus flexible and powerful. The tools that give you lots of freedom to build lots of different kinds of things generally have a steeper learning curve. So that's something to keep in mind. This is a flow chart, which means, yeah, getting things done doesn't have to be this complicated. So whenever you're making a game, the fun part is different for everyone, but I find that for everyone there's the part that they're most looking forward to, the part that they get excited about, the thing that really keeps you motivated and driven. And often that's plotting out a story. It might be designing mechanics. It might be planning the overall arc of the game. If you're really into drawing and animating, it might be doing concept art. It might be writing the dialogue. There are lots of different things that might represent the fun part to you, and that's where you're going to be tempted to spend a lot of your time. Game making also comes with much less fun parts. Integration and testing, project management and organization. This is actually a big one. It's helpful to know where all your files are. Bug fixing and resolving technical difficulties. It's not fun. For programming logic, for some people that falls into the fun side, and for some people that falls into the not fun side. And if you're setting out to make a game, it's really important to recognize that you're going to be tempted to spend a lot of time in whatever is the fun part for you, but you'll never have an actual complete working game unless you commit to spending a lot of time in there doing the unfun stuff. And this is my graph of the process. When you're making pretty much any creative project, you start out and you're really excited, and you make a little bit of progress, and you get even more excited. You're like, yeah, it's coming together just the way I wanted. And then you hit the tedious slog, and then you hit horrible technical difficulties, and then you panic. Sometimes you think about scrapping everything and starting over, which is a terrible idea. Don't do it. I'm going to talk more about that later. And then at the end, you have a complete game. And the reason I put this up here is to recognize that this will happen to you. You're going to get to a part where it's just horrible. If you spend any time at all in entrepreneurship or startup circles, you'll hear people talking about the minimum viable product. And the gist of what it means is you have an idea of what your fully featured product might look like, with all the bells and whistles and all the features that you want. But what you really need to focus on is say, okay, what is the most stripped down, most bare bones version of this thing that we could build and still have it be viable in the market? And that's something you really need to ask yourself when you're making your game. Ask yourself, what is the simplest possible version of my game? If you stripped it down until you could not strip any more from it, and it was no longer a game, what would be left? And if you run out of time, or if your resources run out, ask yourself, what would you cut? It's really important to figure out what that simplest possible version is and make that first. Also, in terms of process, this seems like a really logical flow, and it's extremely tempting. You think, okay, I'm going to plan everything out and do all my design and make sure I know exactly what my game's going to look like. And then I'm going to make all my art assets and do all my writing and all my backgrounds and all my sprites and everything else. And then I'm going to start programming. I'm going to cram everything into my engine of choice and make it all work. And then there will be bugs, so I'll fix all the bugs and I'll play test it. And then at the end, I'll have a game. And if you do this, you probably won't have a game at the end. It's much better to move in a spiral instead of a straight line. Figure out your extremely simple version of your game, even if it's not a game, and build that first. So that means plan it, do your art, build it, and test it. as stripped down as you can possibly make it, maybe even only one feature. When I start making a game, I think, okay, the first thing I need to do is make my sprite move around on the screen, and I'm not going to do anything else before I get that far. And then come back around and add the complexity in circles. Work in a circle instead of a line. And one of the big problems with the idea of working in a straight line, or what is in software development circles is called a waterfall process, because the org chart looks like this, is that if you've made assumptions about your technology that turn out to be wrong, or if one of your mechanics is fundamentally broken or really confusing in ways that need major fixing, if you front load all of your planning, you're not going to find out about these problems until really late in the process, and it's going to be really demoralizing. So in order to avoid nasty surprises later on in the process, start somewhere comfortable, but put a limit on how long you stay there. Don't spend all your time on concept art. Get familiar with your technology as early in the process as possible. If you're using GameMaker, make sure you have some concept of how GameMaker works. Same for Unity, same for Twine, whatever. Placeholders are your friend. Don't think you have to get the art perfect before you start actually building something. And try to finish a complete cycle before diving really deeply into whatever your fun part happens to be. And this is probably the bulk of what I want to talk about today, is when I see people who come to Dames Making Games and they're really excited to make a game, they are prepared to spend lots of time on it, they're prepared to get through some of the difficult parts, but they hit these pitfalls. And sometimes it seems like no matter how many times I warn people about them, they still trip upon them, which is the nature of a pitfall, I guess. But if there's anything I want you to take away from this, it's these things. If you're making a game for the first time, it is not your magnum opus. This is Ludwig van Beethoven for any classical music fans in the group, but don't think of yourself as Ludwig van Beethoven. If you're making a game for the first time, it's probably not going to be the game of your dreams. Yeah. Maybe some of you can recognize yourself in these statements. I always get really nervous if someone comes to me and they're making a game for the first time and they say, I've been thinking about this idea for years. And you know, I never want to turn away anyone from something that they're really excited about, but it's important to accept as early as you can that the thing that you make, especially if you're a new game maker, is probably not going to look like the thing in your head. It's not going to be true to your vision in all kinds of ways. And some people, when they realize this, they don't want to work on it anymore. They say, if I can't build the thing that's in my head, then I'm not interested anymore. And that's always really sad to see. So if you have that wonderful idea that you're really excited about and that you've been thinking about for years, maybe make that your second or your third game. Give yourself room to make mistakes and take some of the pressure off. And don't be the person with an enormous folder of concept art but no demo. Also, the choke trap. I always try to come up with a way to describe this phenomenon, but what seems to happen is, again, someone is making a game for the first time, they're really excited, but then when it comes time to move beyond the planning process and actually start building the game, they choke. And I imagine that inside their heads, it looks a little bit like that. So, here's some signs that you might be choking. If you get really obsessed with trying to figure out exactly the perfect tool for what you want to make, rather than trying a bunch of them and experimenting, it's going to be a lot harder to complete something. If you think you need to figure out everything about your game before you actually start making it, you might be in the process of choking. If you don't want to talk about it or show it to anyone, there might be some details you want to keep secret for reasons of spoilers or whatever, but it's usually a good idea to get feedback on your process and talk to people and show them what you're working on through the whole stage, not just when it's perfect. And if you have a beautiful title screen but no demo, it's the wrong way around. Feature creep. This is a bad one because it hits you later on in the process, and usually once you're really deeply into something. Feature creep is a term that I think is probably used in a lot of fields to describe when you're working on something and it occurs to you, like, oh, maybe we should add in this feature, or maybe we should add in this mode, or maybe we should add 5 more weapons, or maybe we should do this and that. And in adding all these things to your game, you lose sight of your core idea, and the size of your project actually balloons way beyond what you're actually able to accomplish. So you might be suffering from feature creep. If your core gameplay isn't working, but you're already thinking about adding additional gameplay modes and moves and weapons and stuff like that. If you don't have a really clear idea of that simplest possible game, you're going to be especially vulnerable to feature creep. And if you're playtesting it or showing to someone and they say, oh, hey, you should totally add this thing that just occurred to me. Sometimes, yeah, it's a good idea to add that thing. But if it gets to a point where you feel overwhelmed and you think, oh, I have to change my whole thing now, or there's so many things to add that I don't understand what I should be working on, then feature creep might be a problem for you. Also, the I'll just start over trap. This is a really, really tempting one, and again, it tends to hit later in the process, and it tends to hit at that low point to the graph that I showed you when you're panicking. And the thought process goes something like this. You've hit a particularly difficult problem, and you think, you know what, if I just scrapped everything that I've been doing and start over, I've learned so much in the process of making this that I'll make it so much better, it'll be so much cleaner, and it'll take me way less time because I know what I'm doing now, and I won't have to deal with this enormous problem that I've just come across. That is a fantasy that does not come true. If you scrap everything and start over, it's not going to be way faster and easier to rebuild the whole thing. You're going to run into new problems that haven't even occurred to you yet. Please don't scrap everything and start over. It's way better to have something that is finished that you can come back to and revise over time than something that's 3/4 of the way done but that you threw away because you got discouraged. So, the number one thing I want to impress upon you is your first few games are going to be small and buggy and not really the games of your dreams. They're not going to be what you imagined when you first dreamed of becoming a game developer. They're not going to be the games you dreamed of making. And that is okay, and it is actually encouraged. It's a sign that you're moving forward. You are way more likely to make the game of your dreams if you make a bunch of terrible games first. And this is a screenshot from E.T. the game, which is sort of legendarily terrible. And there was a talk about it in Toronto recently that tried to make an argument for why it wasn't terrible. I don't know if it's actually terrible or not, but
Great game.
the screenshot's in there anyway.
Great
Yeah.
game.
Great game.
It is, really
All right,
is.
you should listen to Ryan. There's a sort of narrative about it that it's terrible, but I don't know, maybe it's not terrible. Maybe this is a game of someone's dreams. But yeah, make a bunch of terrible games first. I was at a conference where one of the guys from Von Beer was giving a talk, and at one point he showed a spreadsheet of all the different game ideas that they had that they were thinking of making these quick and dirty prototypes of. And it was just a giant list of stuff like, robot bears in space, ? And if you make lots and lots of games, you're much more likely to bring your skills to the point where you can make that wonderful game where you've had that idea for years and years. So take the pressure off yourself, give yourself permission to make something that's not great, and build your confidence that way. Also, ask for help. Some people suffer in silence forever because they're too embarrassed to ask for help, or they're worried that no one will help them, or they're worried that asking for help will make them look stupid. There are so many people in the city who love to answer questions, who are eager to help. There are internet forums, there are other developers. There is no excuse to suffer in silence if you're stuck on a problem or if you need advice or feedback on something. Ask for help, and ask for help frequently. This is me, and this is my contact information. When Jim and Ryan and I were emailing before this event, we were saying that we should talk a bit about some of the amazing community that exists in Toronto. Dames Making Games I've already talked about, and I hope that at least some of you check out a social. We have them every month. But also, there's a co-working space in Toronto called Bento Miso that hosts tons and tons of game events. Every other Monday they have games with friends where people get together and play games, but also people who are working on games will often bring in prototypes or beta versions or various unfinished versions of their games that people can try out and they can get some good feedback that way. So Games with Friends is really fun. Every couple of, I guess twice a year, they do the Bit Bazaar Market, which is kind of like a craft fair except for independent games. So you'll see local developers selling their games, but also selling interesting physical objects related to their games. It's really fun. And there are all kinds of other events happening there, but there's also an enormous community in the city. Toronto really has an amazing scene, and if you're interested in making games, it would be a huge shame if you didn't get involved with it and take advantage of it. And these fine gentlemen will also be talking about it. So before I pass it on to them, does anyone have questions for me? Or Jordan, did you want to leave this until the end, or did you want to do Q&A now?
You have how much time left?
I don't know.
Sorry.
How long have I been talking?
7 o'clock.
Oh, it's right, 7 o'clock?
Okay.
Okay, then we'll do the Q&A after.
All right.
Well, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Thank you, Cecily. Now we will be doing our first raffle now, so I hope you guys bought a raffle ticket. Matthew. Matthew, prepare to pick one. Also, courtesy of our president, Ian Nastagis there, raise your hand. The president of GNU, Ian, we are going to also be handing out Steam games with our raffle, with the first 3 raffles. So good luck to everybody, and pick a ticket. Matthew, pick a ticket.
You're going to need a password.
You just got someone buying last minute tickets.
Okay. Ian Nastagis of the gaming community.
I'm blinded. So yeah, there's Portal 2, Psychonauts, and Rock of Ages. You get the first pick. Which one you want, Steve?
I haven't actually played Psychonauts yet.
Oh my god.
Awesome.
Wow. So I'll Psychonauts.
All right, done. Oh boy. So there'll be Portal 2 and Rock of Ages remaining. Okay.
All right, you ready, Ryan?
Yeah. I'm just gonna grab a random bottle of water.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Creighton Henson. Ryan Henson Creighton.
I don't think you guys appreciate how many truth bombs Cecily just dropped into you, but oh my god, every single thing she said was like bang on and take it to heart and like tattoo it right there on your left ventricle. So crucial. My name is Ryan Henson Creighton. I'm the president and founder of this company, Untold Entertainment, Inc., which is an approximately one-man operation here in Toronto. And we scale up and down for the size of the project, I say. So we work a lot with kids broadcasters making games that support TV shows. And if those games need 5 people, we're 5. If they need 30, we're 30. Usually they only need 2, so I hire an artist and off we go. I'm going to be telling you about tools. I thought that might be interesting. How many of you have tried to make a game? And keep your hand up if you were successful. Right. No, that's about right? So about maybe like 10%, maybe 20% kept their hands up. That's good. So the people who were not successful, show of hands, was it lost interest? Was it lost money? Was it out of time? Okay, was it didn't know what the heck I was doing? Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting. So this will kind of be like my kind of private, personal commentary take on a bunch of the tools that are out there. Cecily mentioned you can get stuck. You can reach choke points with the tool that you choose, and you can get to a spot where you just can't proceed because you don't know. Do I have to? Sweet deal. It's on password screen. I had to steal Cecily's computer. I didn't want Cecily to be the only one who had a presentation with slides, so now I've made Jim the only guy in the room who doesn't have slides. But I think she's going to have to stay here every 15 seconds and punch in her passwords.
Why would it?
I'm not too sure. He thinks I'm not doing anything already. Where did the presentation go? That's weird, eh? Here, let's drop it in back on there. Yeah, maybe pull it to the desktop that I was trying to reach. Cecily Carver, ladies and gentlemen. The people who did make games, what did you use? Did you make that? No? What tool?
Tried several ones.
Okay. RPG Maker, yes. Okay, don't hold on. Okay.
Another one is Black Double.
Wow, you're using weirdo stuff. I've never.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What'd you use?
Unity.
Unity. You were successful with Unity.
Yeah, we actually have our launch party coming up.
Ah, fantastic! Congratulations.
Thank
Who else? Were you making stuff? You were making stuff. What'd you use?
I use
Python. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Was it like a like a multiplayer online kind of game? With Python?
Just
No.
for practice.
Okay, cool. For practice, what do you use?
Pygame JavaScript.
Pygame. Oh, is that like a framework for Python that lets you make?
Yeah,
games?
yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll talk about a couple of these, and I'll give you my from the industry what I heard kind of thing. So I mean the one that's on the tip of everyone's tongue is this program called can't even read that. What does that say? Unity. Is this really where you guys do presentations on like the weird wall with the line through them? Anyway, so Unity is both a game engine and a game tool, and it's a game framework, and it's like a runtime, right? So what this does is it's a multi-platform target thing, and we'll talk about multi-platform target things. What it allows you to do is build a game and then get it out to a bunch of different platforms and devices, which is a really, really important thing. Some of the tools that I'll be going over, you can only deploy to one target, which means you can only crank them out to iOS, or you can only put out a PC game or only a Mac game. If you're looking to do this for practice, or like Cecily was saying, just to get your first couple of games out there, sure, whatever. You know, if you crank it out so it only works on grandma's fridge on that little screen there, that's totally valid. But when you get into transition into a mode where, say, off the top of my head, you have to feed a family of 4, you really want to look at stuff that gets you up on more things than just one platform. So Unity currently will get you up on Mac, PC, possibly Linux. I'm not too sure. Linux is kind of a weird oddball there. It'll get you up on iOS, on Android, on PS3, PS4, possibly the Xbox platforms. I'm not too sure now, but they're constantly adding support. It'll get you to the Wii U, and then they just announced Unity 5, which will totally skip their plugin. They used to have a plugin for web browsers that nobody was downloading, and then you get your game into schools, and it's like you gotta go talk to the IT guy and get him to install it, right? So it was a real barrier to entry that Flash sort of overcame over the course of 12 odd years, right? So now they're just like, nah, skip it. We'll just go directly to WebGL, and we'll skip the plugin entirely with Unity 5. So now you can go directly to WebGL, which would be fantastic, of course, if everybody implemented WebGL the same way. The kinds of the games that you can make in Unity include 3D games. And you can also do 2D games as well. Now, an important thing to know about Unity, if you've never used it or never seen it before, is it is a place where you assemble all your stuff, right? So if you want sound files, you gotta go make your sound files in a different tool. If you want pictures like you see on the screen, you gotta go make your pictures in a different tool, right? You're not gonna be doing any modeling in Unity. You can, if you're like a wizard with code, you can actually code triangles in Unity, but God, please don't do that. So what a lot of people do is, they're using an external program. They crank out an FBX or a 3ds model or something else, and everything gets brought into Unity. So Unity is sort of like the great orchestrator of your asset files, but you're not actually going to be creating assets in Unity. So it has a 2D mode as of version 4 something. It's kind of interesting. It's demonstrated here. They got this little bean character. So what you do is you you split it up, you make like a sprite. This is called a sprite atlas, where all the different pieces of your characters are sort of there, and then you're able to create like a hierarchy, like the shin bone's connected to the thigh bone kind of stuff, and you're actually able to animate the different pieces. So they got this little beam, little garbanzo beam, like walking like this, and then since it's still a 3D program at heart, when you tilt your camera, you can see kind of like that Mario game where you can see like 2D goes to 3D. Oh my God! So you've got flat planes that are sort of stacked in front of each other, and then when you bring the camera around, just into an orthographic view, it looks like everything's flat, right? So that's how it treats 2D. So it's not native 2D; it's sort of tacked into the system. I haven't talked to a lot of people who've used the 2D stuff, but I hear it's pretty decent. So some of the stuff that you would actually use to create assets, to bring the assets into the software that you're using, a lot of people are using Blender because it's free as in beer. It's also bad tasting and filled with empty calories as in beer, and I hate its guts. So I'm desperately trying to find something that isn't Blender. I don't know, like I'll report back. I don't know if you guys know stuff, but the thing I'm currently looking at is a thing called Modo. They just put out a version on Steam. It's $150. Which isn't free, but it's better than having to deal with this horror. Yes, what do you got?
I don't have anything. I just have a question.
Yeah.
I'd like to know your reasons for hating Blender.
Okay. Let me tell you a story about Blender. So Blender, and I mean the current version is better than the earlier version. I started with the earlier version, right? So the earlier version, you start the program, it's big and gray, and you got this big gray square, right? The geniuses behind Blender, it used to be a paid product, and they're like, screw it, nobody's going to buy this thing, and it went free when they abandoned it, right? So then everybody started like adding on to it, house cards programming. So you get this big square. I'm like, this is a 3D program. What is this square supposed to be? I don't understand. Normally, all 3D programs that I've seen, I'm trained in 3D, have 4 quadrants, right? 4 viewports. You see top left, top left, bottom or right or whatever, and you see like a like a perspective view of your model, right? This no big, just boring gray square, and I did not, so okay, you click on it to maybe move it around, maybe that's an object, and it doesn't move it. It puts this weird 3D cursor thing wherever you click. It just sticks this cursor, just moves it around the screen. You're like, how do I do anything, right? I had no idea how to use this thing. So I bought a book. I bought Blender for Dummies, and man, did that book make me angry, because when it started revealing the secrets, it was like, it was like watching Lost. It was like, that's stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So here's what you got to do to get your 4 viewports in the old version of Unity. You have to take your mouse, and you have to go to the top of the screen, and click and drag, and you're pulling down this secret pane that you wouldn't know about unless you paid the $60 for the Unity for Dummies book, right? And in this secret pane, because the whole thing of Unity is that they didn't want any modal dialogue, so they didn't want anything like, what's that? Oh, Blender, sorry. They didn't want any modal dialogue, so like, are you sure you want to? And it like goes in, like modal dialogue goes in front of the stuff you're looking at. They didn't want anything blocking the stuff that you're looking at. So you pull this pane down, and there's your user options. So you go to like 4 up, and now you've got 4 viewports. I'm like, wow, I don't know why that's not default, and then you have to like save it as a default and some other weird, keystroke combination. Okay, to move stuff around, that thing actually was a cube, right? Which you only know when you see the perspective view. To move it around, to select it, you hit the right mouse button, unlike every friggin' other piece of software in the world. And to move it, you hit the G key, which stands for, grab. Oh my lord. And by that point, when I read grab, all right, there goes the book. I was done. This piece of trash program. So I hate Blender. So, but you might dig it.
Maya's also really great.
Yeah, Maya's great. You got $4,000? I don't. I'd love to use Maya. I mean, you guys steal everything, but I kind of feel that if I'm making software for a living and I'm stealing the software I'm using to make that software, karma's gonna get me. Somehow, I don't know how I'm gonna get hit by a bus that has, Maya on the side of it or something like that. Anyway, so, the brutal thing about Maya is that it's $4,000 commercial, and they had a $2,000 thing, strangely called Maya Complete, which was incomplete, but it cost half the price. And I thought, yeah, I could sell a couple organs and maybe buy the $2,000 version. And Max, 3D Studio Max, also had 3D Studio Max Full and Gmax, which was $2,000. So they were both $4,000 or $2,000, right? Then Autodesk bought Maya and owns the whole, it has a monopoly on the software now, and they killed both intro level programs. So you can't get, thanks, you can't get anything. I gotta, I guess, make the slides go faster so Cecily doesn't have to come up here. So you can't get squat for $2,000 now. It's $4,000 or nothing, which is brutal. So Moto, $150. It's got like a 7,000 polygon limit, and you can crank it out to FBX, and I will report back when I'm here next time and tell you
I
how
can't
my
remember the
adventures
name.
went.
It's something that starts with a T.
With a T.
Yeah, like I was talking to I messaged BioWare artists and stuff, and they told me.
T.
I can't remember.
Anybody know 3D starts with a T? No? Neither do I don't know. There's tons of stuff out there, as we'll see. What do you do for your 2D assets? Well, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I got Cintiq, and I use Photoshop, man. Photoshop's the awesomest. It's like, yeah, okay. Photoshop's great. What are you going to animate in? And some people are like, yeah, I animate in Photoshop. And I'm like, you're ridiculous, because that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Right, so it's not an animation program. You can do animation. You shouldn't. You're probably right. You probably shouldn't. So, you know, if you're doing cover art, if you're doing a certain style of game, if you're doing something like D-Mean's game, like the Yogg, I don't know if you know that game, but you've got a lot of static backgrounds, sure, go nuts, knock yourself out. But if you want to animate, my personal recommendation is Adobe Flash. Adobe Flash has a bad reputation, and rightly so. I've used it for 12 years, and I'm very, very angry at Adobe right now because they basically threw us all under that Maya bus, and we're, you know, a lot of us have lost our jobs and our livelihoods over the way that they handled Steve Jobs' whole, like, you know, attention everyone, flashes and cool, peace out, I'm Steve Jobs, and then he dies, and then, you know, the rest of so, sucks. But what else are you going to animate in, right? So another option is Toon Boom Harmony. Is that what you were going to say?
No, I was just
Some
gonna-
weirdo thing? What's the weirdo
No,
thing?
I was just going to add because
Yeah.
I thought I read that the reason behind Adobe stopping with Flash is because of HTML5 supporting Canvas now. So I'm wondering how much you would think the skills are transferable from your experience.
I'll get to HTML5. Oh yes, I'll get there.
All
I just attended a really great presentation by the guys from Clay Entertainment. You guys know Clay? They did Shank, and they did Eats, and they did, it's a famous Clay game. Mr. Jim
Mark of the
McGinley.
Ninja?
Mark of the Ninja, yeah, if you know Mark of the Ninja. So that's Clay, they're out in Vancouver. So they did a great talk on, I mean, your stuff can look like this, or it can look like wicked sick like Mark of the Ninja stuff. So this is down to your drawing ability, not Flash's capabilities. So we're using Flash for our game Spolerium. So this is kind of the way, one of the ways that you can do straight ahead animation if you're familiar with animation terms, where you can get on your old Cintiq and you can rock it and you can do frame by frame and then clean it up and then ink and paint. You got onion skinning, you got a bunch of great features. Or like it doesn't have, one limitation is it doesn't have skeletal or bone systems, right? So Harmony does, but Harmony is a lot more expensive. That's the Toon Boom product, right? Way more pricey, but it does bones. But I talked to the Clay guys and they're like, yeah, bones, like it's too limiting for us. And it's just like 3D where you gotta set up a rig and you set up sort of like joint limits so that elbows can't bend backwards and stuff like that. And then if you want to get something really fluid and not something super robotic, you're a little bit more limited. Yes, sir.
I thought that Flash did have a bone tool.
You don't want to use it. Don't ever use the bone tool in Flash.
I had to use it in my program.
Pro
It's the
tip,
worst thing.
don't use it.
Yeah.
You know, right? Because you can't even animate with symbols when you use it's the stupidest thing ever. Don't touch it. It doesn't exist. As far as we're all concerned, that it doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. So yeah, the best way I found to do it is you draw the pieces of your character and do puppet style animation, right? So you're gonna put all the pivots, like the pivot point's gonna be here at the knees, and it's gonna be here at the thighs, and you know, the one thing though is that there's no IK, there's no inverse kinematics. So if you got a guy's arm and you want to move it like this, you go like this and just the forearm goes and everything else is hanging down here. And then you got to pick this one up and put it up here, and you got to pick the hand up and put it up here. Whereas IK, you'd be able to pull my finger, and then the whole arm would go up like that, which would be better. So, I mean, they've got 6 guys, I think, in India working on Flash right now. It's very, very sad. It's very, very sad. I mean, that's sad. I can't stay on this slide much longer. I'll get weepy. I should mention there's this great book out about Unity if you want to learn how to use it. Oh my God, I wrote it. Oh, that's horrible. But that's in its 3rd edition, and it's fantastic, and it's got lots of crude jokes that your mama won't let you read. Unreal Engine is another engine out from Unreal. You would use it if you want. I've never seen anything made in Unreal that doesn't take place in like a dank dungeon with slime and or sweat or blood dripping from the walls. Every single game seems to look the same, except for Antechamber, if you guys have seen Alexander Bruce's game, right? But he purposely like bent over backwards to make it look different. So a lot of the stuff looks really the same. You get a lot of wicked-looking, effects and lighting and stuff right out of the box. But their pricing model is a lot different than Unity, and you're actually you won't have to worry about this as a beginner. A lot of schools are using this because it's just like, hey, you want to make games look, you can put a gun in the player's hand, you can run around shooting stuff. That's all you want to do, right, fanboy? All right. And then they take your money and you go to school. But if you ever sell bunches of copies of this, they're taking like a big chunk of your profits. So as a beginner, you don't have to worry about it. My recommendation, if you're looking at Unreal versus Unity, is everybody's using Unity, and now fewer and fewer as the years go on are using Unreal. So you really want to go where the community is. Just like Flash, it's very capable at doing certain things, but you got to go where the community is. If the community's flocking away from Flash, just like they dropped Beta, even though Beta was better than VHS. I had an Amiga 500 when I was a teenager, and it was way better than like the 386, but everybody bought the 386, so my Amiga didn't have any software for it, and I cried. So, you gotta go, Jimmy's nodding, he knows, he's been there. You gotta go with what people are buying, even if what people are buying is the inferior thing. So, I'm not saying Unity is the inferior thing, but what you'll get from going to something like Unity is you're gonna get a lot more tutorials, you're gonna get a lot more people and support, and you're going to get the exact same problems that we all have with Flash right now. They're just 10 years delayed. So in 10 years, mark my words, mass exodus, everyone jumping off the ship to the next great thing, and Unity will be this gross old man with nipple hairs, and it's going to be a horrible. It's going to be a horrible. Apologies if you have nipple hairs right now. You're not an old person. I got nipple hairs in the brain because my daughter has one of those like Guinness Book of World Records books. And she's like, the longest nipple hair, Daddy, was 4.5 inches. How long are your nipple hairs? Here we go, measuring my. Anyway, kids are fun. Xcode is the tool, is sort of the code editor that you're going to use if you have a Mac. You can write in their language called Objective-C, which is basically my waking nightmare. It's a horrible language, and I despise it. And if you know anything about programming, like, has anybody used this piece of garbage? No? Yeah, right. So if you know anything about programming, when you call a function, you pass in parameters, you have to type the parameters as you go into the function. I took a course, and I'm like, why are all these prefixes on like just certain function calls? And they're like, oh, that stands for next script. I'm like, what's next script? And they're like, well, back in the 80s, there were these two guys, then they got bought by Apple. I'm like, oh, I don't want. So there's all this weird history, and it's like, if you haven't been a Mac guy for, since 1987, you're, Xcode. So the biggest problem, though, that I find with Xcode, aside from it being hellish, is you only get up on one deploy target, right? You're getting, two. You're getting up on iOS, and you're getting up on the Apple Store. You want to go Android? You got a port, right? You want to get onto PC, you got a port, right? So I don't know, in this day and age, in this economy, I don't know why anybody would ever go with a technology that only deploys to one target unless they're crazy. So I would say it's an avoid. There are some frameworks, though, if you do ignore my advice and decide to go with Xcode, that'll help you out a whole lot. Everybody's using these, Cocos 2D, Corona SDK. Some people hate one, and I forget which one they hate. I think it's Corona, where you actually have to be connected to their servers to compile, which is kind of a weird thing. That's part of their licensing thing. Cocos 2D, again, it's not a language, it's a framework that helps you render graphics to the screen and flip sprite sheets and get animation stuff going.
I believe Corona is PhoneGap. Like they're.
I don't know what PhoneGap is.
It's like the commercial version, and that's like the free version or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And I believe there's a way to set it up to compile locally on your machine.
Oh, is there? Somebody's trying to explain PhoneGap to me, and again, it's like, well, back in '04. I'm like, I don't care about your history. I don't. C++ is just a language, and there's no tool for C++. You can write C++ in Notepad if you want to. If you hate yourself, but don't. So get any code editor or whatever. A lot of people use what's the Windows thing they're called, Jimmy? There. Yeah, Visual Studio. C++, I mean, it's like kind of a close to the metal, we call it, code, where you're down, you're actually like manipulating machine memory and stuff like that. It's way too nerdy for me. Like eggheads dig this stuff. I don't. And there are better languages now, but people are kind of stuck on it because a lot of people are using it. I don't know. It's not my bag. It's not my scene. HTML5. HTML5. Here's my story of what I'm going to do to sum up HTML5. So everyone's like, oh, Flash is this. Steve's like, Flash is dead. Go to HTML5, right? Steve is a crafty bastard because Steve Steve has this app store, right? And the app store is the one reason you buy an iPhone, right? Like Android stuff can do things way better, but you ever look at the Google Marketplace, and it's just like amateur hour. Like, oh my God, who made that app? Some guy's kid, right? So, the store is one of the major things that's selling that device for them, and they know it very, very well. So Steve goes up there and he's like, okay, Flash is dead, and then they cancel their mobile web plugin because it's too much to maintain it for all these myriad Android devices. Steve's not going to let him on there anyway. And Steve says, oh, HTML5. HTML5 is the future. He says that even as Apple refuses to implement all the specs properly on iOS to make the stuff run in the browser well, right? So what Steve's actually doing is to keep an app store on top by preventing you from making games that properly work on mobile web, because he's a bastard, and he's dead now, and I'm happy. And I plan to visit his grave someday and do a little jig. That's super disrespectful, but fuck that guy. So here's a little story about HTML5 I'll tell from last week. So I was asking a lot of people, because we're at this fork in the road, the people who are working on Flash. Are you going to use Unity, or are you going to use HTML5? A lot of my clients are requesting HTML5 because they read the Globe and Mail and they don't know shit about nothings, right? So they read, these really, mom and dog papers. It's Joe Average, and Joe Average doesn't know things, but Joe Average is like, I heard HTML5 is the next big thing, So they're like, oh, and then they go to vendors and they're like, I've heard HTML5 is the next big thing. I read it in the Globe and Mail. So then you're stuck with kind of having to educate the client. Well, we can't do sound without like a 2-second delay on this, things like that, right? And then they go spend their money, and you build a thing in HTML5, and it's like, it can't do everything Flash does, and he's like, I warned you, and they're like, blah, so fight. So here's the story from GDC last week. Doc knowledge. So I asked this one person, and he's been using HTML5 to build games for the past few years. He's got a big shop down in Peru, and I said, so what do you think of HTML5? And he thinks for a little while, and his eyes sort of glaze over. And he says, the thing about HTML5 is fucking sucks. Right? I'm like, so funny. Next night, I'm talking to this lady who runs a shop, and she's using HTML5. I'm like, oh my God, you gotta do this. I was talking to this guy last night, and I said, what do you think of HTML5? And he says, the thing about HTML5 is, she interrupts me, she goes, it fucking sucks. Like, right, so this is the attitude of HTML, but the people who are using it and who are making a living on it hate it. How many years do you have in your life to devote to things that you hate? Are you going to spend all day with this thing that you hate? Be my guest. I don't know. I'm not. Not for me. I know, I'm going way over time here. Sorry, Kurt. This is interesting. You might I saw this at GDC. You can actually code stuff to the Wii U using HTML5 and using their framework that they're going to give you. Nintendo used to be a lot more strict. You used to have an office with a locked door. You still have to have a locked door, but now it can be like in its cellar, so you don't have to be so pro. But the reason why that is because nobody owns a Wii U. So you're gonna, again, it's the one deploy target problem, right? You're gonna build with their framework for their crummy system that nobody owns, and very few people will see your game. So just keep that in mind. It might be like, ooh, I'm working with Nintendo, but nobody knows. Nintendo's bankrupt next week. GameMaker, Cecily mentioned it. I've never used it, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it has multiple deploy targets. I know that it has drag and drop code if you're a beginner, and then you can switch to typey code if you're like, I'm super pro now. So that's something if you're a little bit scared of code. When I started with Flash, I didn't know code either. I got a job as a game developer, and they're like, make a game, and they had drag and drop code at that point. And so the drag and drop code really helped me. I learned to program on the job. GameMaker, cool. Somebody mentioned RPG Maker.
One interruption with GameMaker is they just announced, I
Yes.
don't know how much it costs, but basically you can get on the PlayStation with GameMaker.
Oh, interesting.
And Unity's cost for a PlayStation license, they don't really list it. So GameMaker, in terms of multi-platform, is actually trumping Unity right now.
So you think they made like a better deal with them?
I couldn't believe GameMaker of all things would even support that.
Well, this was the thing when they were targeting. You could get up on the Wii with Unity, and so they're listing the prices for iOS and Android for their extensions to get up on that, and then they're like, Wii, call us, right? So I actually talked to a dude and went, all right, so how much is it to have your extension to get on the Wii? He was like, it's $10,000. And everyone's like, oh, you can get on the Wii with Unity. Well, good luck getting the $10,000 to do it. And he said they actually had to reduce that cost to $8,000 because people couldn't make $10,000 on their game on the Wii. Interesting. That was on their digital marketplace. RPG Maker. So the same thing is going to hold true for RPG Maker as it will for Game Maker. You might look at it and go like, yeah, I can make a game as long as it looks like Butt, as long as it looks like Final Fantasy circa 1992. But interestingly, people are using it, and there's a lot of tech snobbery that goes around. They're like, oh, you're using Flash, oh, you're using RPG Maker, you're not using C++, you must be less of a human being. But I mean, ever hear of Hotline Miami? Oh, Game Maker, right?
Great.
I don't know if you've heard a game called Always Sometimes Monsters. This thing, RPG Maker. Actual Sunlight, is that what, or To the Moon? To the Moon? To the Moon, RPG Maker, right? And which?
Actual Sunlight.
Actual Sunlight. Okay, so those two games, which were, I don't think they made a bundle, but they're critically acclaimed. Actual Sunlight's on Steam. To the Moon just got on Steam. So you can get where you want to be. You can get into the big marketplaces, even using the tech that people, dump on it. So don't beat yourself up over the tech that you decide to use too much. The one caveat is that, I'm trying to put my game on Steam right now, and with fewer people using it, there are fewer people I can ask for help, because I'm not a super technical guy, right? So, weigh that out. If you're using Unity, everybody's using it, and you can find a million people to help you do the things you need to do. This is Adventure Game Studio. If you want to make a point-and-click adventure, again, a number of pro games are made with Adventure Game Studio, even though it looks like kind of a non-pro program. You might laugh at this. This is a program called Scratch. It's intended for small children, but they use it in first-year comp sci at Harvard, I believe. So come on. The great thing about this is, you remember Cecily was mentioning that a lot of programs abstract how they do code, right? So they'll all have ways of doing loops, and they'll all have ways of doing conditional statements. So the same is true for Scratch, and that's what Flixel actually, not Flixel, Stencil is actually based on. Thank you. But what's great about it is it's drag and drop, and although you won't be able to produce anything that you can put on a platform that grandma and all your friends will be able to play, you will be able to use it to figure out some of the principles of code. So if you're really scared of that stuff, you'll be able to figure out how a loop works and how variables work. And then when you see it again in maybe Game Maker, you do something, you'll be like, oh, that's like the shiny bunny icon that I used in Scratch. That's not so scary. Why don't they put shiny bunnies on it in every program? I'm just rushing a bit here because I'm talking too long. Game Salad, Cecily mentioned, I've never used it. Hit it. Hit it. What's the 1 minute Game Salad?
It's all drag and drop code. It's beginner friendly. It's free. And I think it has iOS support out of the box, I think.
I agree, but I think it's not free. I think they take a cut of your sales if you use it.
Yeah.
So you can make an iOS thing, but they're taking that. And they have, what's neat is they have a lot of templates. So if you want to do I want to do the 2D platformer, it's like, cool. You want dinosaurs? You're like, no, I want aliens. Okay, draw an alien. Whee! So that's how that works. Twine, Cecily covered it pretty thoroughly. That's what it looks like up there when you're a user, and that's a player. That's what it looks like when you're a developer. And again, as Cecily mentioned, you can CSS and HTML the fudge out of this thing. You can add graphics to it, animations. You can do everything you can do in HTML5 by adding on top of whatever you create in Twine. But if you're not savvy like that, you can start just by producing your own kind of choose your own adventure kind of thing. And then, one last thing I should mention is you can pay for prototype. You can get out components from board games you already know. You can get out clay, you can get out markers, you can get out paper. This is how I started back in the late 80s. And there's old man's going to talk about the 80s. Back in the late 80s, everything was locked, and dads were the key, right? So it was the nerdy dudes in the 80s who could tell you how to program and buy the computers, and which nerds. And I didn't have a dad in my life, and I didn't have men in my life who could unlock the secrets of programming for me. I would buy a book, and I'd type the program from the book, and I'd make a mistake, and the thing wouldn't compile. And I don't even know what compiling is, and I don't know how to troubleshoot it. So a lot of the arcane knowledge was locked to me. So I did this. I made my games on paper with scissors, goddammit. And I had my friend play it, and I didn't know what I was doing. But this is a very valid way to do things. If you're not quite savvy, you're just getting up to stuff, get some clay. And that will conclude what I have to say to you. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Jimmy, do you have slides?
Oh no.
Oh no, he doesn't. I'm sorry, I forgot. Not meaning to rub it in or nothing, but.
Thank you, Ryan. That was really good. It's really good that you mentioned all those tools because, you know, as the gaming team, we use a lot of those tools. I've used Unity for the past year, and I know that we're making a collaborative game at the GMU, and we're using Unity currently right now as well.
How do you find it works with collaborating? I heard bad things.
Yeah, it
Are you
works.
sharing files? Do you guys have the asset server? Or?
It works. Dante actually is our director of that game.
Version control is like a paper shredder for our files.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Nah, baby steps.
But we're making progress, right?
Yeah.
They're only on version 5. They're only charging $75 a month. Okay, next one.
So we're going to do another raffle. This is again for a family discount card, courtesy of the Yorkdale Microsoft Store, and a Steam game, courtesy of Ian. So Matthew, will you pick a ticket? If anybody wants to buy a ticket throughout the shift and throughout the night, feel free to go to Matthew.
Can someone do drum roll, please? Alright, the winner is 526241. 526241.
Anybody?
I haven't seen anyone leave the room. What's going on?
Thank you.
What? How did you? That's impossible. Are you guys reading off the tickets you didn't sell? What's going on? Okay. How did you?
Okay. We want to be fair so somebody else can win.
Alright, so I'll do it again.
Fine, if it happens again, you can take it, but.
Alright, up. 526236.
Oh,
Yay!
In your voucher,
Right. So we do have Ian's left our what? Portal 2 and Rock of Ages.
Yes.
Okay, so which one would you like?
I have Portal 2 ready, just on our pages.
Rock of Ages. Okay. All right, great. All right, so we've gone through 2 of our 3 guest speakers. We currently have 1 left. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Jim McGinley.
Not yet.
Where's
He's in the bathroom.
we're back.
Do another draw.
Sure, actually. Why not?
Want another drum?
Let's do another draw.
Alright, can you get another drum roll? And the winner is 526258.
Okay, we have a winner.
Hey!
Because we're gonna end up doing another one after. Here you go. And so yours also on. There's either Rock of Ages and is there another one on the list or?
Okay, we're gonna go with.
Or Portal 20. Portal 2 or.
And now we've added Gary's Mod.
What?
Portal 2?
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay.
Nice choice.
You have to go through this.
All right. So without further ado, again, please welcome Jim McGinley.
I have no slides, apologies. What I need to know is what I should be talking about. Everyone here is still in school? Well, who here isn't? Okay, I'm assuming then graduated. All right, well, so most people are still in school. How many people here are looking at making a career out of making games? I'm assuming that would be everybody. More or less, okay. How many people here would consider themselves familiar with the Toronto game making community already? Just one. That is terrible. We're doing a terrible job. All right. Well, I'll start with that. That's basically one of the topics we advertised. It's been left to me. So just to go through a few things. Why do you care about the Toronto game making community? There's only one reason you care. There's only one. Anyone? Who cares?
Because it started as a community and want to build a strong community.
That doesn't help you.
Okay.
Networking.
Networking doesn't help you.
Fabulous riches.
Doesn't help. All right. The only reason is for motivation. That is the only reason that it's there. So if you can make a game and not belong to a community, there are people that can do that, and they do exist. The Rogue Legacy guys, you know the game, they've done very well. I've never seen them. They're here in Toronto, Solidor Games, building these things.
Really?
But for most people, you'll find that basically just being with people making games helps keep you on track. I just missed your networking point, but basically you meet people, and doing a game by yourself, that's incredibly hard. Also, you end up doing multiple jobs, and you end up being crap at all of them. So basically, ideally, you'll meet a few people. Are you familiar with Get Set Games in Toronto?
Yes.
Snake and Jump?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Basically, they were a team before that they had actually met at a previous job, but they had come to TOJam and basically just decided to see if they could make a game together. It turns out they could, and they decided, well, hey, we're going to try, to make games. So again, the big reason for the community, the reason it's so important, is just to motivate you. So be it Dames making games, be it TOJam, it doesn't really matter. It's just if you're finding that you're going home on the weekends and you're not building games, well, then you're never going to have a career in games. So basically, you want to figure out, well, what's stopping me? And if it's just basically meeting people helps you, finding like-minded people helps you, that's what these organizations excel at. That's at least what I've gotten from it. How about you, Ryan? Would you say that? Accurate?
I agree, Jimmy.
Cecily, accurate, more or less?
Yes, accurate.
All right, there we go. So basically, some things you should be aware of then is the Toronto Game Jam. That's coming up at the end of April. No fixed date just yet. That's 450 people gathered to make games for 3 days.
How
We have some
many?
people,
How many?
450.
Holy crap!
We have some people here. Ian's been out. How many other people here have been to Game Jam? It's pretty good. It sounds like it wouldn't be helpful, but it's just more like having that focus for 3 days, an excuse to tell all your friends, well, I just have to sit here and build games because everyone around me is building games. It actually is very, very motivating. And while the game you make may not be good or bad, you'll begin to realize just how much you can get done. And that's the game jams that are on offer, be it Toronto Game Jam, Dames Making Games. That's really what they show you is like, I can actually get something done. Some people don't need that, but again, I need that. I'm always amazed. Who here is familiar with Gamer Camp? Tell me. Okay, Gamer Camp is interesting. It's like Toronto's version of PAX, for lack of a better word, or Toronto's Indiecade. It's not quite PAX, it's not quite Indiecade, but it's meant more for the public. Like, so game development aside, you're like, well, I'm making all these games, who's playing them? So Gamer Camp's trying to attract an audience of both developers and the public to come out and play games. It's really kind of an intimate event, and it's very interesting. That's about October. I would definitely keep an eye on that. IGDA Toronto. Woo! All right. IGDA Toronto is a group that meets monthly, or every 2 months these days. It's a little bit more, tries to be a little more business focused. In other words, are you interested in like the financial aspects? Are you interested in game production? Like the little more serious topics. Again, it's Ryan.
I'll stop you there, Jimmy.
Yeah.
We do some business stuff, and why Jimmy's pointing it out is because not a lot of the other groups do have that focus, but the focus of the IGDA is in professional development of game developers, right? So we had the guy from Polygon in, and he talked about that side. If you've ever been Polygon.com. Polygon.com? Anyway, the 3D site where all the 3D nerds go. We have talks on how to get funding. We have talks on production. We have talks on very few talks on programming. But it's more professional development.
Yeah, it's less about like all these events are about you're going to meet great people and maybe go for drinks afterwards. That's almost common across the board. But I'd say what makes IGA different is like the topics themselves tend to be like, hey, if you're serious about making games, we have some great information for you. Versus like maybe a more inspiring talk.
Yeah.
You
It's
might
not artsy-fartsy, Jimmy.
more hardcore. So again, I encourage you, like IGA Toronto does have a membership, but they're a little bit like easygoing on it. So if that's stopping you from going, I would just go. TOJam is free. Gamer Camp, they have a structure, like a tiered pricing structure, but I think it's like $25. So don't let price stop you. Just people are happy to have you come.
You do not need a membership to go to IGDA Toronto events at all.
Okay, cool. So again, go. Why are you going? Again, what was the point?
Motivation.
Motivation, people. That's what I'm here. That's why I'm telling you these things.
There's also Skill Swap. I don't know if that's connected to IGDA or not.
No, Skill Swap is its own independent entity held at George Brown. You might have seen on the overhead here. On Friday, they're actually telling you about how to build shaders in Unity from I think a guy that works or worked in electronic arts. So if you're just interested, if you're a programmer mostly, or actually a programmer or like an artist more on the technical side, go to SkillSwap. It's about once every 2 months. It's totally free. Since it's at George Brown, the machines are there, so you just walk in. Here's your machine. This guy will teach you about shaders and Unity. Like that's this Friday. They had another person that was teaching you about Unity from the ground up. It's an amazing resource that I tend to overlook, but definitely look into SkillSwap. Also, Hand-Eye Society. This is a bit more of an umbrella organization. So what they do is every couple of months they tend to have, or are used to more like a social, where you would just go out, hear some speakers, and then have drinks in like in a bar in town. What Hand-Eye Society is kind of excelling at more is their website, because their website tends to be like if there's something going on in games, they'll post it there. Like there was a Super Street Fighter, which was basically these people built a version of Street Fighter where I would do this, and torches would come up to do my little fireball move. And the problem is, how would you know that would exist? Hand-Eye Society. They had some people doing Halo as a ballet. And they were doing this on a Friday night. And like the Hand-Eye Society is the only reason I knew these things existed. So if you're looking for just sort of like game culture stuff, that's what the Hand-Eye Society is about, trying to promote it. They've also got their own arcade cabinets. That was from a couple of years ago, but like 5 arcade cabinets are floating around there with indie games from Toronto. So really amazing. Again, I call it an umbrella organization because they tend to basically support a variety of events and just make sure people know what's going on. So again, Hand-Eye Society for their website. Just go to it. It's amazing. Who else am I leaving out locally that'd be important?
Torontaru.
Oh, Torontaru. Every first Wednesday of every month?
Tonight.
Basically, there's a monthly meetup where people literally, Torontaru just bypasses all the presentations, says, just come out for drinks. Come out for drinks. There's, it's organized by MC, I want to say MC Bedard, who basically is a producer on Fez and also a producer on Rogue Legacy. So she organized along with Chris Petrowski from Cappy. They just put it together because in Tokyo, there's this event where people come and drink. And that's the event. They do it every month. So they've taken that and brought it here. So again, if you're just working on your stuff by yourself, I just recommend going out. I usually like to go with a friend, and then you kind of meet people and your common ground. This is kind of what makes it better than say just a regular night out. Probably the people there, they're into games. So at the very least, just ask them, like, oh, hey, are you working on something, or what games do you like? So it's kind of, it's just makes it so much easier to kind of meet people and to even find out people are, interested in stuff.
Oh, Jimmy, if I'm a student and I go to Torontaru, what do I not ask people?
Oh, okay. With regards to networking etiquette, I would say that all of these events, if you were to bring your resume and kind of hand it out, it's not going to work. Meaning that people might take your resume, like let's say they're from Drinkbox locally or Get Set or Ubisoft and they're there. It's just not the proper place. So your best hope is basically just to, again, meet people, and then maybe, maybe something will come up in conversation, but I would not treat it like a resume, not that kind of networking.
I should have clarified about that kind of network. I meant like networking as in like meeting people.
Your networking is awesome. I'm kind of going on about the other aspect of networking, which is, again, it sounds like it'd be a good idea. I mean, you would go, maybe have your game to display, right, on your iPad and, a pitch. But again, none of these, I don't think we actually have an event like that.
Games with friends.
I was going to say, IGDA Toronto actually has occasionally more focused events to actually connect people. Games Making Friends is like that?
Games with Friends, yeah, every other Monday. People go, and not only is it board games, but people set up their laptops on the ledge and you can go play.
That's cool.
There's also Randy runs, you know about Randy's playtest parties?
No.
Oh, so Randy, the skill swap guy, every once in a while runs playtesting parties. There's just at somebody's house, and you go there and you eat cookies and play other people's games and get feedback.
And I would say that any of these events you go to, if you just go to one, you'll meet people who would know about all these events. So if you're kind of like, oh, how am I supposed to keep track of it all? Again, Hand-Eye Society website is my #1 place. But any of these events, you'll meet people and they'll just kind of fill you in. So I just recommend, linking in. So there's other Toronto stuff, because the great thing is the community has grown so large and diverse. If you don't like one of the communities, you'll probably find one you like. So don't get discouraged. Like, they're no longer sort of all the same. They all have different goals, kind of united by the fact that everyone likes games, but it's great. There's just sort of like diverse sort of agendas, diverse plans. Like for instance, I help organize TOJam, but not everybody is enthused about the idea of what are we doing at TOJam again? I'm like, you're coming in for 3 days and crunching, right? And some people are like, it's not really my thing, and like, that's cool. Don't come to TOJam. But now, before it would be like, well, there's nothing else. But now it's like, oh, there's these other things. All right. So again, just look around for something that suits you. So Toronto aside, just Game Developer Conference. Who here has gone? Okay. Who here knows what it is? Okay, that's good. Game Developers Conference. What's the only benefit? Only one
Fabulous
benefit.
riches.
What's that?
Fabulous riches.
Networking. It's only one benefit to all these things.
You keep track of the industry?
Who cares?
Motivation?
Industry. Motivation. Who said motivation? Motivation is seriously, that's the biggest reason. You'll hear when people go to GDC is like, I went to GDC, saw some awesome people, went to some awesome presentations, drank my head off, I came back ready to make games. So the only reason you should be planning to go to GDC is if basically you're like, oh, I've been programming my game for a year, right? And then you get to go out, you get to meet, just scale it. You get to meet 24,000 people doing the same thing, and then come back energized.
Speaking of same things, is it still motivation if you find out someone else across the world is making the same game as you?
Ooh, well, that's a bigger problem.
Yes.
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Hopefully your game is so awesome that basically either production value sets it apart, or it's just different enough, who cares?
Right.
Yeah, that's the hope. What I would say though is the part that GDC, again, you fly to it with the hotels and the GDC cost, it's a very expensive thing. So it's not something I would say you would do lightly. But what's interesting about it, and the one aspect you should be aware of, is the Independent Game Festival, which is part of GDC. And what will happen is if you're trying to build something and you have absolutely no deadline, which is probably everybody here, it's like, oh, you just kind of, keep building. No deadline myself, I think that's the worst thing for you. Again, school does a good job of giving you a deadline, but once you're on your own, you're like, oh man. So what happens is, usually I try to gear my stuff around submitting to the IGF. Whether or not it gets in, that's good luck. But you spend, I think it's $80 to submit it, and basically what you'll notice is the couple of months before that deadline, you'll probably get more done in your game than you have the whole year. So what you should be doing is, I would look at any game you're working on, set yourself up, be it IGF, there's other events out there, just try to gear yourself to have these deadlines. And again, if you make the deadline yourself, I doubt you'll adhere to it. Let's say I said, oh, on April, I'll have this done. You know you're going to move your own deadline. So I would use the IGF for that. And heaven forbid you actually manage to make a game that gets into the IGF, because that means a free GDC pass. It's a change. It's a life-changing event. If you're familiar with this year, Damien Summer, he built a very, very bizarre game for Comics versus Games called the YOG. He submitted to the IGF. It actually got in, which was amazing. So he got to be part of this huge award ceremony. He's a very good game developer, and to actually have that happen, I can't think of something more motivating. Also, Luis Hernandez, am I saying Luis' name right? He built a very strange game. It's a one-of-a-kind called Jazzpunk. It's on Steam. It looks like a AAA game if you've ever seen it, and what makes it very unique is it's a comedy game. Not a game that you basically play it and go, oh, that was funny. It was designed to be funny, in the same way that airplane movies are funny. And again, he submitted it. It's actually, it got in as a nomination, which got him on Steam. And again, these things can basically start saying, well, now you can actually get a career. This is the beginning of a career for them. So again, I encourage everybody here to kind of look at, if you're building anything, look at events you can submit to. Even again, you've heard about some local Toronto stuff, there are local Toronto events you can submit to as well. And not as many, but they're there. So just again, when you're thinking about GDC, think about the IGF.
The GDC also has a scholarship program if you're still in school. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but my teachers constantly tell me to go for it. And if you win, it's usually maybe around 10 people that win it, and it's a free trip to GDC. And they say once you do that, once you get there, you're almost certified to meet people and probably get a job in the industry.
So I know one of the guys who won the IGA scholarship in Montreal, and I met him while I was at GDC, and he's like, oh, I'm like, hey, do you want to hang out? We can go, I think I was going to ride the streetcar, the cable car. I love the cable car. And he's like, no, I have to go to Double Fine. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, well, part of my mentor, the IJA scholarship gave you a mentor, he worked at Double Fine. So he was forced to go to Double Fine to kind of like hang out all day. And I'm like, that's a pretty amazing,
Poor guy.
The only problem with the scholarship program, it's again the IGDA scholarship program, it's part of the, what they do, is that it's so competitive. Like there's I think 13 people chosen from North America.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. All right, so that kind of is just talking about sort of things you should be aware of.
Sorry, with regards to the Independent Game Festival, there's actually Level Up Showcase coming up by the University of Toronto.
That's a cool showcase. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, if you're a student in Toronto, it's the mini Independent Game Festival.
Can you still submit to that?
No, but for anyone who has a game that will be ready in a year, maybe look into it and maybe...
Yeah.
And we'll be there this year too, right?
Sorry?
So we'll be there this year.
No, yeah, like look into it, going to it like in the next few weeks maybe.
I think the overall theme here is if you're working on a game by yourself, again, you want to meet people, but you also want to show off the game. So you've heard about Level Up Showcase, that's a possibility, IGF. There's another smaller, but more indie event, like more artistic, called Indicate. Indicate is absolutely worth submitting to. And again, if you have a game that's very out there, that's better. Like that is the place for it. And they're calling themselves like the Sundance of, you know, the Sundance of film festivals? Sorry, the Sundance of game festivals, it would be Indicate. So again, what I find is just kind of like doing these things will just help you make your game. That's why you're doing it. It just helps you keep going. During the, I said, you saw Cecily's chart. Ryan and I were joking where you kind of get to the few stage. I would call that year one. Because once you get past multi-years, it's not just few, it's just like game just keeps going and going and going. Ryan was saying you get numb to it. It's not that you hate or love your game, you just want it done. You just have this task list and you just like get it done. So again, how do you handle that? One of the strategies is meet people, talk to people. You'll see that Fez had a famous 6-year development cycle where they submitted to IGF after a year or two. And that gave them motivation and money so they could resubmit it to IGF again and re-win, which was awful. But the fact is they were using it just to keep going. So if you want an example of how motivation helps, I don't think Fez would be here if it weren't for the IGF.
Alexander Bruce's story as well?
What is Alexander Bruce's story?
So Alexander Bruce's story, very quickly, of Antichamber, he basically wanted to be in the big Unreal competition. But he picked a smaller contest, and that was his deadline. And he made the deadline, he got into the contest, and he won, and it got him a little bit of money. He picked another contest deadline, and he repeated that about 10 times. And he won 10 contests, flew all around the world, and just shored up all this cash. Again, like Fez, 5-year development cycle, until he finally won the Unreal competition, and then he just, cleaned up at IGF, and he rules the world. He's a millionaire now. That's how he managed it. And he worked alone. He was a little guy on a farm in Australia.
I would say the interesting thing, sort of, especially today, is that you'll hear the idea about like ideas are worthless, and it's all about the execution. And just 10 years ago, I would say that's 100% true. But I'm finding more and more, and you're seeing this with the tools and some of the things that have been discussed, that really, if you've got some interesting ideas, the tools are becoming like, they're serving the ideas now. So basically, you can probably use, I've seen some stuff in Game Salad and Game Maker where you're like, these are amazing things. So the code or the art is no longer as big an obstacle. So if you've got an idea that might just take like a couple of months to do, if it's that good or that different, you might actually have a chance of standing out. So what I'm seeing is, my problem, by comparison, I have sort of the standard white guy background. Meaning I like comics, I like The Matrix, I like Lord of the Rings, I like everything that's already been done to death. And of course, a lot of the game developers have that same kind of background. But let's say you're coming at it from a completely different angle. You're just a guy that likes old music, right? But you're like, I can't make a game. And how do those fit? Well, if you basically have been influenced by old music, maybe you have sort of a new game idea where basically you're bringing in some new ideas that might stand out. And I would say, like, if this was 10 years ago, having that diverse background would not be helpful because everyone's just trying to execute. It's like, look, if I could just get a car with collision detection, that's a win. Now that's kind of behind us. So if you've got some new ideas because like your background might lend itself. My wife, for instance, I wanted to make a knitting game. I have no idea what that would be, but she loves knitting and she has this idea that basically might, if she can realize it, it might actually be something amazing. Where for me, I'm kind of like, you know what, I think I can make Robotron, but better. You know what I mean? That's kind of just, that's how I'm built. So I would say that again, if you're in the room and you're like, you've got these sort of new ideas. I'm not talking new as in, you know, what do you call it? Just radically new, but probably new just because of who you are. You probably have a tool that can do it. And that's sort of the point of what was being taught earlier, is there are tools that maybe lend themselves to something you're trying to say. All right. So we got GDC, Indicate covered. Just out of curiosity, so who here is working on a game? Who here is submitting to the IGF? Did I fail in my mission? Did I not just, was I not clear enough on that? See, I failed. That was my whole point of my presentation.
Lost everyone at $80, Jimmy.
Oh, see, if you, now the thing is, if you think the $80 is a problem, I would say the $80, the 2 months of development before you spend that $80 will pay for itself. It's not about winning the IGF. It's that those 2 months before that deadline, you and your team, because you can't move that deadline, you'll get so much done, it's worth the 80. Totally worth it. Even if you get 0 feedback, even if you submit it and all it is a little GIF on that page, it's totally worth it. So find that money. Totally worth it. Okay, how are we doing for time?
It's 9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock?
No, it's 8 o'clock.
It's almost 8 o'clock, yeah.
All right, let's see.
You have a few minutes.
Okay, who is trying to land a job in sort of the AAA game industry? Let's say at Ubisoft in town. Is anyone trying for that? All right, so basically, that is possible, but I would say you would have to be at the top of your class. Basically, especially with a company like Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, they can afford to be choosy. So if you're finding that you're not at the absolute top of your class, because again, I think they're going to require a degree. I don't think they will look at you otherwise. So that's the first thing. And they're going to want a copy of your marks. I think that's just a given. They've got the HR, what do you call it, positions that they what do you call it, HR, not the committees, HR division that just would have that streamlined. So I'm not trying to kind of like dash any dreams, but if you're looking around you and there are people that are like better coders than you, better artists than you, getting better grades than you, that's your competition. Everyone at George Brown, you can imagine, which is a huge game making program, is trying to get into Ubisoft, right? And they're actually focused on specialized skills. They're not doing anything general. They're just like, here, you're either a 3D modeler or a 3D animator, or you're a programmer.
You forgot writer.
I don't think they do. They have writing at George Brown.
Well, no, like I meant like I'm thinking like BioWare, because the writing team.
But you can imagine the writing team's background.
Yeah.
What is your credentials for that?
Well, all I got really is my writing and my art. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying. I'm saying basically then for you, you better keep writing. You better have writing to show them.
Yeah.
Writing you're proud of. Writing that's won writer awards.
Okay.
I mean, that's. I don't think it'll be. I don't know enough about that area, but I'm sure then it's like you have to prove you are a great writer.
Does getting a book published count?
I would assume so.
Okay.
I would say easier than that is writing a piece of interactive fiction within Form 7 that Cecily mentioned, or even Twine, and entering the interactive fiction contest that we do annually.
Just not to answer your question, just I would think though that also you don't want to be talking to someone like me because I'm more of a programmer.
Fair.
There's got to be people out there who are willing, to say, look, oh, you want to be a writer in games? Here's what I'd be looking for. That I imagine that has to be very well laid out.
IGDA Writers Special Interest Group, Writers SIG.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm in George Brown's game development program.
Okay.
So yeah, that is right. There is specialty courses. So after the first year, where you learn pretty much everything, even some coding and just Flash ActionScript. Second year, you're either doing modeling or animation, and every day, and I swear every day, they love showing you your competition, even both in the industry as well as third years and what they're doing. Just anyone that's doing amazing, they love to put on a great big, just projection screen, just telling you this is what you have to beat, and you better do it or you're not getting anywhere. But it's true because competition is just that fierce.
So the good news is, I will say this. Starting on a down note, which is AAA is very, very hard to get into. And again, the only reason I say that is I don't think people realize just how hard, especially in Toronto. Like it's only Ubisoft. Having said that, what is AAA these days? Like, no one knows what this industry is going to be 10 years from now. So I would say regardless, if you're AAA things, you're seeing now all this fragmentation of AAA people leaving AAA for a variety of reasons, and starting up their own indie game companies. So I would say that if your only plan is to go after AAA, don't get discouraged if that falls apart. All right, what you have to do is you have to just keep working at your skill. So whether it's basically getting better at Unity, getting better at art, you just have to keep at it, and I can't stress that enough. I mean, it sounds obvious, but if you stop, then people are like, well, then you have nothing to show me, right? Anyone I've seen in town, and again, Bento Miso has been fantastic for this. You'll see people, Alexander Martin, otherwise known as Drock, and created Starseed program. He would just be making games, and his first few games that I played were like, they were okay. And he's gotten better and better and better, and suddenly he's an IGF winner. Now I say suddenly, I mean, he was doing computer science at U of T and stuff, but again, it wasn't the computer science that did it, it was the fact that he just kept working. So again, what you should be doing is if you're hoping to have a career in games, you should be focused and building games. It sounds so obvious, but what I see is people relying on their grades or on their diploma. I have a University of UWO diploma in computer science. For games, useless. I mean, you have to have it for Ubisoft, certainly. But then Ubisoft's like, okay, but also show me, can you know, show me a compiler you built.
Oh.
That's a little difficult because I'm not that good. That's the top of my class, guys. They build compilers for fun. In a programmer world, that's at least what I'm up against. So in my case, I'm like, you know what? Don't think I'm a AAA guy. So basically, I'm building indie games on the side. Not to the success of some of my peers, but hopefully one day. What else would be important? Got the motivation message. Everyone's submitting to the IGF. Everyone's building games. Who here is interested in building games but hasn't built any yet? All right. So what you have to do is figure out whether it's writing, art, or code, and just build stuff. Okay. And again, tools are no. But this before, you could argue that you didn't have the tools. I would argue the tools are now. Yeah. If you said that basically I couldn't express myself making a game, then people would be like, well. They might say, oh, I understand, but behind the scenes, they'll be like, you're really not trying. And you'd get zero sympathy from me. I'd be like, wow, I built games when I had to buy a book from the store. You can download a game and reverse engineer it, let alone have it documented, let alone on a forum post a question, and you can't build games? Again, people will tell you to your face, oh, I understand, but anyone who's making even one game will be like, I don't really understand. Or again, if you're doing art, right, and you're like, okay, well, you should be improving your art. Just doing more of it. Even if that art, even if you can't partner with someone to get in the game, just do more art. Just keep doing it. Build more 3D models, right? Or build more 2D art. Just keep doing it. Who here is going to keep doing it because of my presentation?
Ooh.
See? I don't see as enthusiastic. Here's your other sort of thing to think about. What I would do for fun if I had more time. I think Ryan is in the same boat. I would just build games. That's what I would do for fun, and like the programming end.
I would just Nutella until I had a heart attack.
But what I'm saying is, if you're like, oh, building games is sort of this task, or it's going to be a chore, right? You're kind of competing with people like me, where it's like, oh, so what's a chore for you, I would actually just do for fun. It's going to be kind of hard to compete with that. So again, if building games is a chore, maybe find out why it's a chore for you. Is it the part that you're doing? If you don't like the programming part, you're going out to IGDA and teaming up with someone who can do the programming with you, so you can concentrate on the part that you like. All right, that's what this is all about. So again, if building games is a chore, then guess what? Get out of it, or find the part that you like and team up with someone. Because again, otherwise you're competing with me and Ryan, and I can say that we are modest success stories, still trying to be big, despite the fact that we would just build games for fun. And I've got the computer science degree. So do you kind of understand what you're up against? So if you're like, well, you know what, I don't think I'm struggling to basically get Game Maker. So I'm going to stop because of it's just too much of a struggle. Then I'm like, okay, maybe then someone else should do the game maker part that you're struggling with, and then you basically, maybe you're kind of more of a manager capacity. You find out that you're very good at organizing people, so you're just bringing the people together. That's a very real thing. I've seen people do that, it's amazing. All right. I think those are the kind of the main points. I don't think I really have anything else that's not lesser. After this, it's all just lesser points.
We're almost out of time.
Yeah, okay, so I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
You're all making games now, motivated. It's part of the speech, motivation. Top it off. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That was really inspiring. We do actually have on the Game Makers Union website, gmunion.ca. We do actually have a little sidebar that says a bunch of the different sorts of events that happens in the city, and it automatically just lists all the stuff that we have the groups that are watching, like Toronto Skill Swap, the Toronto Club, our club, stuff like that. And we have, and like I said before, we have a lot of the people at the GMU have benefited greatly from going into the community and meeting all sorts of people at the events. I mean, there are several people here that I would never have met if I didn't go in the community and sort of meet different people. Next we're going to do our third final raffle of the night. Matthew, raffle time.
Anyone last minute tickets? No?
Yeah. And whoever wins, we're not going to sort of redo it again because that keeps happening too much. Drum roll, please.
Winner is numbers 526256.
526256.
Did I win twice, or is that not cool?
You said whoever wins wins.
Whoever wins
You
wins.
said double winner.
It's extra lucky.
Jimmy is reminded of the time I won all the things at the TOJam arcade.
Yeah, just actually, here, let's give you. And talk to Ian about getting getting Gary's mom. Okay, so we're gonna do our Q&A with our amazing guest speakers. So if Cecily and Ryan can come on up, we'll just move these chairs a bit closer together. Yes, you can have some quality time next to each other.
Fireside chat.
Okay. So
No, it's fine.
So right now, you guys will have about, say, half an hour session to ask whatever questions that you have to ask these three. And also, you also have half an hour because it's your last chance to buy raffle tickets. Up until now, we've been raffling off Steam games and Microsoft discount cards courtesy of the Yorkdale Microsoft Store. However, next, we are giving away these courtesy of Nintendo Canada. A Nintendo 3DS XL and a Legend of Zelda Link Between Worlds. So if anybody wants to go buy a raffle ticket, this is the perfect time to go do it. Remember, it's $5 for one ticket and $10 for three of them. All right? Oh yeah, and USBs.
And USBs.
Yeah, and Microsoft USBs courtesy of Microsoft Store.
Hey Jordan, can I buy a raffle ticket?
Go ahead. Yes, you certainly can. And you
can buy more than one.
Can I? He has a knack for winning raffles.
You can buy me some tickets.
What? Yeah.
All of
Yeah, but it's anyone's game, so.
Because he took both halves.
Also note that even though this doesn't come with a game, Nintendo's doing a promotion that if you buy a game and register the game and the 3DS before March 31st, so that's next Monday, they'll give you a downloadable copy of Pokemon X and Y for free.
Ooh la la!
So just keep that in mind.
Oh my goodness, gets better. You should double the charge for the raffle ticket right now.
Shut up, Jimmy. Shut up. Wait till I'm done.
Okay. But just so everybody knows, The Game Makers Union, we do actually have several meetings twice a week now. All year we've been having two meetings a week at this very time on Mondays and Wednesdays, so 6 to 9. We do all sorts of things. We do teaching of the various tools that these three have brought up, like Unity and also Ogre and Maya.
Ogre, don't go.
We used Ogre at one
Don't
point.
attend.
It was a very bad choice. We regretted it immediately.
We started over with not over.
Ogre.
And also,
It's ogre. It's
also,
ogre.
It's ogre. Also, it's a good. We actually have worked with the computer science department of Ryerson to install. Not only get a lab that we use at both times a week. We also have Autodesk software and game development software that any member can use for coming to our meetings, and you guys can learn about it. We do teach some of it as well. For example, I teach people how to use Maya and a bit of Unity, and we try to help people who have a game and maybe want some help with it. So if that sounds at all up your alley, we have meetings Mondays and Wednesdays, 6 to 9.
And if you have the skill and you don't know what to do with it, we'll be glad to give you something to do. It's like
in ENG 205, which if anybody's not familiar with the Ryerson campus, it's like that little
It's a glass building.
Glass building,
the
right?
weird-shaped glass building.
Yeah, the weird shaped glass
On
building,
the
like
second
directly
floor.
this direction, right beside Metro. So it's on the second floor, like near the stairs. So 205, ENG 205. If you want more information about us, we do have our business cards right at the front, so you can get more information about us and look at our website and our Facebook group and sort of learn about us when we meet. So without further ado, and because I've been talking too much now, our three guests, Cecily Carver, Ryerson Creighton, and Jim McGinley. The floor is everybody's because now it's Q&A time. So here we go.
Hit it.
I come from a very different background. Basically, I took interest in just coding. Even like I started with HTML like back in year 2000, and I've managed to start building using Flash. So I built some Flash animations and Flash moves. Like my first Flash game, it turned into a Flash animation because the interactive part didn't really work. So that was my first failure, I guess. Right now, I'm not in the comp sci program, so I'm studying biology, so it's complete from a different side, I guess. But I still have a knowledge in programming. But I'm just curious, for specific Android development, are there any programs that you would prefer or not use? Anything insight on that?
You use Flash?
I used to. I'm not sure what happened. Like I was part of that kind of Flash age where everyone just started making games.
Yep. You can still use it. I mean, it's not like, oh, they've outsourced it to a team in India, so it's like it still works. It's obsolescence versus obsolete, right? Obsolete means shit don't work no more. Obsolescent means, yeah, it still works, just people aren't using it. So that's more what Flash is doing. But you can use Adobe Air to go to Android. You can use Unity to go to Android. You can use, help me out here, Phil.
GameSounds.
GameSound? Can you?
I think you have to buy it.
I thought GameSound was iOS only.
I thought it did it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think Game Maker you buy an Android package for it.
Right, GameMaker. Yeah. There's a few options. Yeah.
I'm currently using Android SDK. I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't know.
We're using it directly. The Android SDK is for C, if I'm not mistaken.
You can use it for C or Java.
Ew.
SDK specifically for Java.
C, yeah. I mean, you can. It's just more of, even once you master the export, then you're gonna have to write C or Java. And if your background is HTML with Flash,
Oh no, I know C++ and Java.
Oh.
Ironically, I have no background on C. I never really learned it.
For me, it's the difference though between going to the hardware store and buying a hammer or getting an anvil and smelting your own
I
hammer.
was saying, are you making progress with C, the C++, and the SDK?
I'm using Java now for the SDK, and I'm building an application for it. So,
So if you're making progress, just like stay with one.
Okay.
I wouldn't bother switching. But is it because you're stopped? Because you're stopped.
Yeah, I do have some trouble with the interface of the SDK. Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
There's other stuff that'll get you up way faster. Like if you're making an app, just use something that gives you drag and drop controls. Oh, I need a slider. Oh, I need an image. Seriously, why nobody's? Because so this is the thing. When somebody looks at the thing that you built, nobody can see the matrix behind it, right? Nobody's gonna go, ooh, this is C. Like, nobody gives a shit, right? They want a working thing. And the fastest you can get to having a working thing, that's how you win.
I mean, it's similar note. Like the problem with C++ is it's what they use to build Splinter Cell Blacklist at Ubisoft right now, right? And the thing is, they have I don't know how many programmers to build the engine, but it takes so long to develop in C++. Anyone that makes a C++ game of any size then builds another language, which is actually easier, like GameMonkey script. So all their designers are working in GameMonkey, trying to avoid working in C++ because the turnaround times are so low. So you're your lone programmer. You're like, I'm pulling out C++ and Java, which is exactly what they're pulling out at Ubisoft. It's the same thing. And you're like learning how to put it on Android. There's a reason why these engines exist, just to shield you. But again, if you're making progress, this is the thing. If you're actually making progress and you have like you're enjoying Java and you're staying in it, then I would say keep going. But if you're like
disagree, no way. Here's where the rubber meets the road, Jimmy. TOJam, right? You go to TOJam and see what technologies people are using and it finishes by the end of the weekend, right? People using C++. First of all, nobody's using C++.
At TOJam, no one's using
right?
C++ anymore.
You got 3 days, you're not using C++, right? Look at what people are using and then look at the stuff they produce by the end of that weekend and be like, you'll see what's possible. Flash, yeah, possible. Unity, we had some great Unity games this year at TOJam. Twine, sure, I wouldn't call them great, but they function, right? They're finished. What are some of the failed? Ogre, not a flippin' chance. Not gonna happen.
I would avoid Pygame. I know someone mentioned it, just because of distribution woes. It's distribution nightmare.
Oh, what's the Node.js? People were successful a couple years ago with Node.js and some HTML5 stuff. So, yeah.
I don't know if that sheds any light, but that's sort of
okay. Could you remind me where it went to again?
It should be the end of April this year, but that's unconfirmed.
Okay, all right. I'll double check.
Because I'm late building some stuff that needs to be built. Who is in charge of picking the question?
You are.
I'll charge.
Oh,
Okay. Be in charge.
All right. You were talking about motivation before, so I was just curious about when you had mentioned the stuff about like the long haul. You hit a numb, kind of like a wall. How do you overcome that after like a certain period, whether it's writing or whether it's the actual? Like, it could be any of you guys.
How, Jimmy? How? Tell me.
See, I'm kind of a bad person to talk to because I almost always enjoy just, it's like whittling to me on a stick. You know, you have the people that you see like a guy will just whittle a stick. I'll whittle on a game. It just doesn't really, I don't really get demotivated because I've got too many other distractions to worry about. So whenever I can work on a game, it's actually always motivating. Okay. That's why it's a little bit different. But I haven't been involved in a grueling, long project like Ryan.
Cecily counsels people. You're like a psychiatrist for people who can't get past their blocks, right? So you know. On the short term, I'll tell you about the long term in a second.
I think one way is to try to almost inoculate yourself, like recognize that that moment is going to come and don't freak out when it happens. Like if you can only work on your game when you're feeling really great and inspired about it, then when you hit that point, you're going to be like, oh, what went wrong? I guess I'm not cut out for this, and you'll stop. But if you're like, okay, I'm going to reach a point where I feel really bad about this, but you know, I'm going to keep going anyway.
What if you're already there?
Having deadlines is great. Having a goal for, like Jim was saying, contests or events to submit to. Game jams are really great for this, just because there's that timeline. You know, basically, be able to remember why you're making it in the first place, and know that there are going to be ups and downs.
Have you, if you're already there, you also have people, I find if you just have people play your game.
Oh, well, I'm meaning personally more like my writing, but like I was just trying to like overall like.
Yeah, it's a little tricky for like I say for me, for anyone here probably to make writing specific recommendations.
I can make writing specific.
Okay. I was going to say though, there was Chris Petrowski from Cappy. He had this presentation at IGDA where basically his motto, I guess it might be Cappy's motto, was called "It Gets Better." I think it gets better. Yeah. This is a presentation. He goes, "All right, you start on your game, and it's similar to your curve." He goes, "It's great." And it's like, but so he's talking about a 3-year time cycle. He's like, you know, and you're working on it, and then you know, then this is his presentation. Like, it fucking sucks. Then you think that you suck because you know you're the one that had the idea for this, and you're looking at it, and you've got people working on this, and it sucks, and you know that since it sucks, you suck, and I suck, and this goes on for a year. You're in the bathtub thinking you're drowning yourself, and it sucks, and you're the worst. So he's talking about the first month, he talks about how he had a great time, and then the next 2 years, he's talking about it sucks. He goes, but the key is to remember during this whole period, this is his whole point of presentation, is it gets better. He goes, so finally what happens after 2 years, people have been tweaking it for so long that you haven't noticed the incremental changes that made it better. So in your case, I guess editing and just re-editing this piece. That basically at some point, and he goes, I think he even said he can't tell you when it is, when that happens, but he's like, at some point you actually look at it, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't suck. At some point, like, everything has added up, where you're actually kind of
sucks
looking.
until it's good is what he said.
Yeah. So I guess that's going to happen, and you just have to just keep going at it, and at some point you'll actually look at your work and be like, wait a minute, it's gotten good.
I guess I just found that, like, for me personally, I've had to put my writing on the side for actual jobs that pay me.
Imagine,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, writing's a real hard go, but I mean, some tips for writers: kill your baby. This is for anyone. Kill your babies. Get an editor. There's a whole talk at GDC. Get an editor.
Yeah.
That could be mom. That could be someone you
My
respect.
dad did,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, your dad, right? Go for somebody who's not your dad. Go for somebody who doesn't love you. Right?
Oh, he's harsh.
Right. Well, yeah, your mom thinks you're cute. You know what I mean? Like, get somebody who hates you. Get somebody who wants you to fail to out of your shit, right? Then you're gonna know, where what happens to your writing. This is the same with testing, right? This is a hot tip for testing. I got into this trap. I give my game to somebody and I'd say, I've been working on it for 5 years, and and it's my lifeblood and my passion, and I gotta. So they play the game. What are they gonna say to me? They're like, yeah, okay, right. I guess it's, I like this part, I like that part. Because if they don't say that, they worry I'm gonna be hanging in the closet by the end of the evening, right? Here's what you do when you get people testing your game, reading your writing, whatever. You present the thing to them and you say, hey, so here's the thing my buddy's working on.
Oh.
Right? Here's the thing my buddy's working on. He or she wants me to invest my money, right? He or she thinks that this is going to be like the next big thing. I don't have a lot of money, but I want to put some stuff into it. Can you play this and tell me what you think of it, and tell me if you think that I should go in on this? You're going to get some real, through your lies and treachery, you're going to get some real honest feedback from those people, because, yeah, but once again, they care about you, right? They care about you at that point, and they think that love is not being critical, when real love is actually tearing you a new asshole. That's what you need. That's love, right? But people aren't going to love you. So in lieu of that, lie and see if you can get some real honest feedback, because they actually care about you in that constructed situation.
My very first book got stabbed with a fork.
Oh, excellent. Good start. Good start. Oh, here's another tip that didn't come out. I like this one too. They tell artists, you got 10,000 bad drawings in you. Get them out now. Right? Same thing with games. Everyone's pressured to make like the greatest game, because you see the stupid Damien stuff. It's like, oh my god, he's like a whiz kid. Fucking Damien, Draken, like give me a fucking break. Right? Okay, so there's super talented people out there. What do you do if you're not super talented? You make shitty games, right? And you keep making shitty games until your 31st game is no longer shit. I worked at YTV. I made 50 games, and most of them were pretty shit, right? But I continue to make shitty games. So just make as much shit as possible until it starts to become no longer shitty.
I think one other thing to remember, and this is again when you get demotivated, and this is for games or writing, what's interesting, and I didn't quite realize this, even in school. One thing I hated about school was when I had to take courses where I'm like, this course is useless. I think everybody's taking courses they consider they're forced to, but absolutely useless. And nothing at that time especially, this is for me I guess 20 years ago, would convince me that this course would ever be helpful. So the people that tend to succeed would just take the course, enjoy it, and then basically get something out of it. So basically later on in their lives, it's like, oh, it's not a question of like trying to evaluate or like, is it a good course, should I put my time into it? They just do it, and then basically eventually, because the people who plan these courses have put some thought into it, you're at maybe, what would I be doing? Building web pages, and suddenly that course comes in handy, and you're like, man, that sucks that it actually came in handy, because I spent a long time arguing how much it sucked. So how this is relevant is you're writing this thing, but you only have one goal in mind, which is I'm going to make this novel or whatever it is, and it must sell. But the thing is, what you don't realize is you're getting better at writing. So basically, if you're doing any blogging, your blog postings are getting better. So suddenly your website starts taking off, even though you're building the ultimate novel. right? So what's happening is you're getting these side skills that you don't realize. You're meeting other people in writing organizations, which are just like talking about your book. So your whole basis is just this book. But that's made you contacts that even if the book fails, maybe you've made some good friends. So the trick is, don't just think of it as there's just one goal, and if you fail to meet that goal, everything else is a waste of time, because it never works that way. So for me, I built a bunch of games that, not at TOJams, but basically have not seen the light of day, probably won't, but they've actually managed to kind of do things for me that I never would have expected. Either they've got some fans. I built a, this is the weirdest thing, they had a joke competition on TIG Source, the independent game source. Basically where they're like, hey, take a modern game and build it like it was built 20 years ago. So I built a version of Shadow of the Colossus in 2D. I built this in a week, right? It's a joke game. So basically I'm like, I just did that for fun because I thought it'd be funny and put it out there. And so the thing is, 6 years later I was at conferences and I'm like, I'm trying to get a game I care about noticed, right? And they're like, wait a minute, you're Jim McGinley. You built that Shadow of the Colossus remake. And you're like, wow, okay, well, I'm glad I'm known for that. It's just, it's interesting. So again, whatever you're working on, I guess the key is don't just think of it as, you know, I'm building a game. If it doesn't get the IGF, I'm doomed. Because it's not like that. It's just not like that at all.
So for me, the joke game was a game I made at TOJam with my little girl when she was 5 years old. And that was Sissy's Magical Pony Corn Adventure, which remains, it's a 3-day game. It remains the only thing anybody's ever heard about before, and people to this day are just like, oh my god, you know, made that game. And it's what I did to blow off steam while I was in year 3 of the now mounting 6-year hellish ordeal that is Spelarium, right? So Jimmy's absolutely right. There's these side benefits to the weird things that you do that you don't know. You don't know.
I picked last time, someone else.
I thought you were going to be the picker.
Oh, well then.
Be the picker.
I have a question. You were mentioning about the distribution goals of Pygame. I'm wondering what you'd recommend for, is it possible to have like C# with an XNA game playable in the web browser?
Did you say XNA?
Yes.
Drop it. They dropped it. Why are you going to keep?
Well, I mean, now they've got mono
It's their game, by the way.
They've got mono game. People have been porting XNA over to mono. Did I have that right? Mono game?
Yeah, it's mono game.
Yeah.
Mono game is like multi-platform, so you can go to any platform, and I think C# is one of the easiest languages to use.
I would say if it's XNA, you're right, totally dead. Ryan's totally right. But mono game does change things. Having said that, I'm out of my league to know whether it's good or bad.
I would say it's good, but you got to be more programmer-oriented, I would say. Unity does some things for you.
At the end of the day, the one thing I worry about now more than anything is, can people play my game? And what happens is, this sounds like a very simple thing, but like with Pygame, for instance. Pygame came out and it was really easy for developers to make games with it. I'm like, this is awesome. And then Pygame's like, okay, when we upgrade Pygame to 2.7, we're only going to have one Pygame on that person's machine. So there is no version control, which means that you're going to have to download the new version of Pygame, perhaps destroying all the old Pygames. And it's like, you know, I don't build the Pygame libraries, but that's a stupid idea. So here's a ramification on TOJam. I have a set of instructions for, do you want to play this game? Download Pygame, download Python 2.4 and Pygame 2.6 for it. And so basically, if you're seeing any of that with mono game, because XNA was like that.
It's the same thing with XNA. You had to download what the .NET.
I just don't know if mono game is like that. But if you're finding that basically they're making distribution impossible, I would say that that is probably your single most biggest criteria for not using something. Because if people can't play your game, I think that's it. I don't care about playing in a browser. I just mean, can I send them an executable and have a chance of them running? Right? And if your answer is, well, with my mono game, I have to have them download these. You're like, yeah, you have to make a set up program. I think that kills it at this, 2014. I think that's dead in the water. Again, unless you're building Splinter Cell. If you're building Splinter Cell, that's different, but no one here is building Splinter Cell. So.
I care about playing in a browser.
If you care about playing in a browser, of course you need something that compiles for browser.
Grandma does not know how to download an exe and run it, right? And I don't, if you're going to send me your game, I don't want to deal with your dodgy, I'm a student installer and it's going to delete half my output, right? Fuck no, I'm not going to play it. If I can play it in the browser, cool. If I can't play it in the browser, give me a video. You know, that's me. But especially if you're applying for jobs and stuff and we're talking about working together, I'm not running your exe. It's not going to happen. I'll run it on your laptop. I'll play it on your computer. I'm not playing it on my computer. Just me? I don't know. Terrified. Forget it.
I love it rather.
Yeah.
Because then you can send it to people, and if it's embeddable, people can embed it in their blogs and stuff. It's great.
You, sir.
All right, you guys talked a lot about like the meta of being a game developer. I guess that's really important. And I guess this is a really general question, so it's hard to answer, but I was just wondering your thoughts. About game design specifically, you guys have had a lot of experience. Is there any kind of specific tips about what you think constitutes a good game designer? Things that you thought make things fun in a general sense? Or what kind of things would you avoid building if you knew?
Tons of stuff. There are a couple of nuggets I've learned. Control is fun. So the more control a player has, the more fun it is, even to ridiculous degrees like co-op or pole riders, where you kind of have too much control, you know what I mean? So people really like a short feedback loop. So you do a thing and you get a cookie, right? So a good example of what not to do is you do a thing and the thing's pushing the button, and your awesome warrior goes through this big animation of spinning. If you ever played Lego Marvel, it's the worst. It's like, I'm gonna pick that guy up and throw him around for like an 80,000 frame anime. Fuck, no, I just want to punch. I just want to hit this, and the faster I can punch after that, the better I'm gonna feel, right? So control is very good. Miyamoto had this wicked, like when Miyamoto keynoted GDC a few years back, his big thing that I heard people repeating as if it was their thing. My God, you saw the keynote yesterday, didn't you? He said that, I love this, pictures people playing his game, and he doesn't even care what the game is. He's like behind the TV watching people on the couch, kind of creepy, Miyamoto. By the way, Miyamoto is the guy who made Zelda and Mario and Donkey Kong, right? And Pikmin. He pictures, at the end of the day, when the whole game is said and done and everybody's put all the work into it, it's been 2 years or 3 years or whatever, pictures the person's face, and he wants that face to be smiling, he wants that person to be having fun. That's a starting point, right? And then he goes all the way back to the beginning. How are we going to get from here to there? That's why you made Donkey Kong. So picture the person's face when you're designing. There's all kinds of rules and best practices for UI, right? So things happen in UX, which is user experience. User interface is UI. So all kinds of rules that you can learn, you can read books on and stuff. Stuff like, you got a health bar, top right of the screen. If it's anywhere else, you're doing it wrong, and there's psychological basis to that. If you put it anywhere else, people don't expect it there, and it doesn't work, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work. You may notice that like a bank machine, I don't know who uses like CIBC or President's Choice. There are, we call it black hat UI. So there's shitty, skeevy things people will do to get you to do things that they want you to do, not necessarily what you want to do. So here's a great example, bank machine. You got 3 buttons at the end after you got your cash and everything. It's receipt time, you got 3 buttons. Like, go back and do other banking, print with a receipt, and print with no receipt, right? This button is at the bottom right of the screen. That is prime real estate. Yeses go on the right, no's go on the left. And there's a psychological basis for that, right? So the bottom right is prime real estate for yes, confirming a decision, right? They want you to do this one, no receipt, because they save money, right? They don't have to pay for the paper coming out of the machine. They don't want you to do this one, so they put an icon on this one. They put a green picture, so that's even more black hat UI, right? It's like, oh, it's got a picture. I'm more likely to just mindlessly hit the one with a picture, right? So you actually have to force yourself mentally to hit the I want my goddamn receipt button, right? So that's one, and a lot of talks have been done on this. The guys who got the kids to buy all the Smurf berries, you know what I mean, in the freemium apps, they pull all these tricks where what they want you to hit is big and shiny with bunnies dancing around it, even though it says, yes, charge my credit card $3,000. The no is a blue hyperlink that's not even underlined, on this side of the screen, right? So there are best practices for UI and UX that you can learn, and there's even books on stuff like that. There's a book called Game Lenses, the Book of Lenses by Jesse Schell, which is ways of thinking about design. There's a book called A Theory of Fun by Ralph Koster that you can look at. So there are people, this is called ludology, which is the study of games and game systems. So it's kind of, if you're an ivory tower kind of kid, you can go read all this ludology stuff and maybe get something out of it.
Here's a question for you, though. So is your question, what do you do as a game designer to get better or to prove you're a good game designer?
It's mainly just how can I make a game that's fun, really.
See, what's interesting about that is you might call that an old school way of thinking. So while I would never disagree with Ryan, what happens is, I think it's becoming more like, and I think maybe it always has been, game development is more like music. So if your goal is fun, what Ryan just talked about with Miyamoto as an example is perfect. But you're starting to see a lot more voices where it's like Gone Home. Is Gone Home where you're walking through a house, looking at someone's life, uncovering it. Is that fun? Is that main goal of that game? Is what Miyamoto would offer for that game, I think, is absolutely nothing. He'd probably kill it, he'd gamify it, he'd jump. So I think what is going to happen more is, it's not about how to make a game fun. It's like, that I think, maybe if that applies to your game, great. But you should be looking at, what are you trying to kind of express with this game? If you're like me, you're trying to build a better Robotron, it's pretty clear what you're trying to express. But for you, is really fun the end goal? Is that all you're interested in? And if so, you do have at least a long history of sort of, well, these games are considered fun. What makes them fun? Type feedback loop, let's say. Some people would argue, again, you'll get lots of opinions. It's a tough thing. So I would almost look at the question more as, what are you trying to do with this game?
If we're talking about commercial success, the game where you're an old lady who walks to the back of the graveyard and dies is not going to sell like Super Mario 3D World is going to sell.
Well, what's interesting is, do you know the one about the graveyard?
Yes.
For 2003? So did that company not just keep going and just release Luxurious Superbia and win the Nouveau Award?
Oh, that's
So the idea of commercial success, here's your problem with that. If you want commercial success and that's what you're seeking,
yes.
You're up against,
and it is.
You're up against the Get Set guys. They've got 2 stunning Disney quality artists, 2 stunning programmers.
They were hired by Disney, no less, to
right.
skin their game.
But I'm saying they're also looking to their goal is to make a fun game. They've got people, they've got a company. So if your goal is to make a fun game, you're like, well, that's a little bit broad. What's going to set you apart? Because now you're not just competing against AAAs that are trying to make a fun game. You're competing against Facebook people trying to make a fun game. You're trying to compete against name brand indies trying to make a fun game. You're trying to compete with Ryan and I trying to make a fun game. So basically, I would say fun is too broad. You need something more specific. Like,
so
what is?
Wait, hold on. So you're saying like make a game about your child who's dying of cancer because it's an untapped market, and
No, it's like
you get more attention.
No, it's
doing
like
that? Like it's weird. Jump in because you probably have tons of opinions.
Yes.
Well, I think the right question is, may not be, is my game fun, but is my game engaging and compelling?
Sure.
And that may not be the same thing as fun. And I'm actually really interested in, like, the game about dying of cancer, or the game about your childhood, or whatever. I think all that stuff is really neat. When it comes to fun, I don't know. In my community, I don't care about it as much. I care more about, is it interesting? But if fun is your goal, then there are lots of books you can read. There are lots of practical tips and things that people have studied. Like Challenges for Game Designers is a really good book. One thing that's more of a practical tip that I would add is if you're just starting out making games, chances are your game might, you're either sending it to people on the internet, or it's going to be shown in sort of a showcase setting with a bunch of laptops on a table and people wandering around trying things out. I see so many people with really interesting gameplay who will write out a big sheet explaining how to play the game, or put it all on the title screen, where you have to memorize, like, press Z to jump and X to kick, and all these other things. And you should assume that no one will ever read that or remember. And like when I watch people moving around in these showcase settings, and it's probably the same kind of dynamic as when someone is playing your game in a browser, or if you emailed it to them or whatever. If they can't figure out what to do in the game within around 15 seconds, they walk away, they leave. So don't assume anyone's going to read your really detailed instructions. Make sure your game is somehow teaching people how to play it within the game. It's something that a lot of people miss, even if they read all the fancy game design books, and it's really important.
Does that always apply though? I mean, I look at games like Brother, who it didn't really tell you which the analogs to move.
No, but I'm not familiar with that game. But sometimes
it teaches you through gameplay.
Yeah.
Like you can't get out of that first area carrying the log or whatever without figuring out
but
the
like,
mechanics.
can you figure out how to move? Can you figure out that there's a door that you should walk through? you know, do you sit down in front of it and say, I don't know what key to press to move forward, and I'm just running around and I have no idea what's happening.
Here's a corollary to that, though. You mentioned festivals to showcase your game. Not every game type does well in that setting, right? I've played a ton of games like E3. I'm like, but it's when I'm at home on my couch in my underpants with a bag of chips that game really shines. Like Spelerium shows poorly where there's like, I don't know, there's butts on this screen, and there's like Necro Dancer on the other side of the thing, and I've got this like sit there with a cup of tea and solve word puzzles game. Oh my God, fuck me, right? But you know, so when you're showcasing, I guess maybe think of how your game is meant to be experienced, and like that Dragon Cancer is the one I mentioned about the guy whose son was dying of cancer, just actually died of cancer, unfortunately. But the way his thing went is when he showcased it, he doesn't have the game like out of the screen where people can like watch it. He puts you in like a cave. He puts you in a curtained, cordoned off area with a lineup, and you sit down and you're quiet. And he blocks out as much noise as possible, and you can weep, you can sob openly in that velvet cave, and usher you out the other side of it, right? So, you know, things to consider when you're showing your game and how it's meant to be experienced. Yeah, expensive to set up, but they did their best. You, sir.
Do you guys have any advice on people who are trying to mainly be game designers? Because we're pretty sure, you know, you'd have to first program or art, right? Because nowadays it seems like if you want to be a game designer, well, whoop-de-doo, so does so many other people, and it's really difficult to get into. But seeing as I've read your LinkedIn, so I don't mean to be a
creeper.
A creeper.
Bikini pictures
But
on
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what would you need to do to get to that area? And also, like, is there any advice on like what you'd have to do in terms of game design?
Hells yes.
Well, I can speak to just one aspect. Like it's kind of, again, big question. I can't speak to what the AAA companies look for and what, but basically what I'm seeing is the people I would consider game designers. You're looking at like some of the names you mentioned, like Drawkin. I wouldn't consider his programming skills to be his biggest thing. It's the game designs. The art is, I find his art is good, not great. His programming facilitates what he wants to do, but I would consider him a game designer. And again, did he have to learn programming to become a game designer? Yeah. Did he have to do enough art? Yeah. Damien's the same way. He uses a product, we didn't put it on the list, called Multimedia Fusion 2.
What? It's like not as good as Ogre.
If you want to make your life hard, at first it's easy, but if you want to make a game as complex as the Yaga Multimedia Fusion 2, it's incredibly hard. The thing is, he started off with that. He doesn't consider himself a programmer. He considers himself, first and foremost, a game designer. So what you should be doing, game designer, pull out one of these programs, find one you like, and just keep getting better at it. And it sounds like, what do you call it? Like, well, you know, you kind of want to be removed from that because you're like, well, no, you want the game design as a skill. At least in the indie game communities, game design isn't a skill. It's the game you produce. So if that means you have to hire a team to produce your game design vision, that's fine. But you have to have something to show for it. Another example would be Zoe Quinzel. Do I have her name correct?
Yes. Don't say it 3 times or she'll appear.
Zoe Quinn or
Quinn.
So basically, I don't know much about her background, but she built a game called Depression Quest, which is basically about what it's like to have depression. She teamed up with 2 people to do it. And I would consider her more of a game designer than I would, let's say, a technical expert. But I think she built it Twine, and this game as like it's basically what do you call it?
She got it on Steam too.
Yeah, like I don't want to say done very well is wrong, but a lot of people have played it, and it's been a very good experience for a lot of people. So again, how did she become a game designer? Well, she kind of I think she went to the precursor to Dame's making games, built a game in Flash, and then just kept at it until basically she could do this. So I think that what you're looking at doing is you have to have a game to show. It doesn't matter how crappy, but there has to be something that you can show. And you'll notice that again, any of the people I've seen, another guy, Tom Sennett, he made a game called Run Man Runs Across the World. It's a cute little happy face game, but if you go to his site, he lists all the games he made. And you can watch as his games, I wouldn't consider them, again, from a programmer perspective, because I'm a decent programmer. I could be like, I could build these. I would just never think to. Like, I don't have his ideas. But if he told me his idea, I'd be like, whatever. They would just, no one listens to game ideas, really. They want to see the thing. But you'll watch as he gets better. Like, as his games go along, it's actually, you'll notice there's a pattern. Damien's games get better, Draken's games get better. So again, if you just want a game design as a pure skill, I don't think that exists. I think it's you pulling out these things, getting your ideas, and forcing them into existence. Not necessarily completed, but just something.
Game designers I talk to these days are not game designers, they're level designers. So when they say, oh, I'm a game designer for Ubi, I say, what do you do? They're like, oh, I arrange furniture in, Splinter Cell levels. Okay, so the first piece of advice, don't be a baby, learn how to program. Just suck it up, bite the bullet, and learn how to program. Learn how to program, learn how to program. I didn't want to learn how to program. I was terrified of it because of all my failings in the past, not having anybody help me. There's so many people who have, you got a goddamn magic box that will give you the answer to any question you ask it. I didn't have that when I was 8 years old. I would have murdered people in the face to get that, right? You have a magic goddamn box that you can ask any question of, and it will tell you the answer. And it's especially good at telling you answers to programming questions. Oh my God, learn how to program. Learn how to program. Full stop, learn how to program, right?
I'm just
it
going
won't
to,
hurt.
I'm going to just be clear.
If you say don't learn how to program,
No.
I will come over there
No.
to your chair.
You have to be careful. Ryan, in my opinion, with my background, he can't program.
I can?
He can't.
No, I can't. I suck.
But the thing is, you can learn with these tools. Like, you have to be careful, because when you say program, it's like, are you guys going to go out and learn about object-oriented inheritance and polymorphism? That's not what we're talking about.
I do know about those, by the way. Don't know what they mean, but I've heard those.
I should say, I'm exaggerating to make a point. But the thing is, when you hear learn how to program, that's going to, if I were you guys, I'd be just completely, with game over. That's not, it's like learn the tool. Indirectly, you'll be programming without realizing it, whether it's Stencil, whether it's Game Maker, who cares? So what Ryan's saying, when I say learn to program, I would just put a little spin on that and be like, learn a tool, a game salad, a game maker to build your game. You will end up having to program as a result. But learn to program that's the end that you'll end up at.
Yeah, I don't mean go crack like C++ for dummies.
Oh God.
But learn how to program. Well, first thing, cool. The guys who did Gone Home did this awesome talk at GDC that I missed, but I heard it was awesome. And so what they were saying was like how to do a game on a budget. Here's what you do. Go, like, Visa will be downstairs any day of the week. Go get a credit card. That's step one. Or if you got a rich uncle, you're awesome, right? So go get a credit card. Go to the Unity Asset Store, and they've got a million things. Go buy a big pile of things and glue them together and put out a game. Rinse, repeat, right? Because you just buy the pieces. It's like they're like craft kits now that you can just assemble, right? Oh yeah, do it.
In the most recent game jam that I participated in, I had never used Unity before, so I thought, okay, there are a bunch of tutorials on the internet that say learn Unity in 15 minutes, and I'm going to see how much Unity I can learn in the space of 4 hours. And it involved a trip to the asset store. I think for $3.99, I bought
$300 or $3?
$3.99. There's a fully animated little corgi dog that runs around and jumps, and that's basically all it does. It runs around and jumps, and with that plus this tutorial in 4 hours, I hesitate to call it a game, but basically you have a little dog that runs around, and then I got excited and I got a chair and a pizza, and I was like, oh, the dog's going to jump up on the chair and eat the pizza. It's going to be great. And when I give my Davis Making Games talks, and I'm like, yeah, Unity, give it a try, it's fun. And I show them, this dog running around, everyone's eyes get really big, and they're like, that's the greatest thing ever. And I don't know.
4 hours and $4.
It was, yeah. It was so little work, and I don't know, like, has anyone seen Soda Drinker Pro? No?
Soda Drinker Pro, anyone?
Is it the HTML one?
It's a Unity game.
Okay.
And all you do is you walk around in these extremely crudely rendered landscapes and drink soda, and then there's really dumb audio over top of it that's like, this is a great day to drink a soda. And I don't know, I think they have a booth
on
at
Steam. This
yeah.
is not a minor video.
They have a booth at PAX. There's been so much written about this game that's like the dumbest game I've ever seen. But I love it, and I always show it to people as an example of,
Gone Home
just throw a bunch
won-
of stuff together in Unity.
Yeah, Gone Home just won the IGF, didn't they? Gone Home, they used stuff from the asset store. So do that. Find games that have, if you want to be a level designer, find games that have level editors, and then just go build a whole bunch of really cool levels, and then screenshot those or video them, and then you can do like a video on YouTube talking about the thinking that you put in to making these levels. But yeah, you can just it's Lego at this point. It's Lego, and it's cheap Lego. No excuses, magic box, every answer. Why are you sitting here listening to us make games?
I can actually share something on that. I forgot to mention it. So I worked at Drinkbox Studios for about 9 months, helping port Guacamelee to various platforms. And so how they're set up, this will at least give you some insight into their process. So they have a level designer. And what he does is he pulls up the level editor that they've created, and he builds levels for Guacamelee. That's what he does. So basically, he has not a lot of input into, let's say, how the characters will move, not a lot of input into how the art will look. He is strictly, that's all been done, and he just builds levels with all the stuff he's been given, and that is his full-time job. So I think a level probably takes him 4 months, and then, or he builds it like in a month, and they just beat on him and say this sucks, and then they come back. Jason Canham is his name. He has articles in Game of Sutra about being beaten up, but he, at least at Drinkbox, they would consider him more of a level designer, like to Ryan's point. But while I was there, they had to search for a game designer, a senior game designer, to basically take on what the next games are going to be. And that search, they must have interviewed, and I don't think this isn't private, I don't think. They must have interviewed, I think, 60 people. And each one of the people they interviewed had fairly impressive credentials. I was just like, wow, that's so they had a very strong number of choices to choose from, and they were choosing one. And they found him, and he's great. Exactly his background, I wasn't involved in the process. I just know that it's a very hard, so it's going to be one guy at Drinkbox as the senior game designer and the level designer, and that's going to be probably powering their games for the next couple of years.
The guy at Cappy, Chris Petrowski, he's their game designer, and he's a founder, so he started that company. The guy at Get Set, or the guys at Get Set, they're all founders. They started that company. That's how they got that position. So the most fun, don't pick the most fun thing in game development.
It comes down to the fun part versus not the fun part. The dream is always I'll get to a point in my career where I can only do the fun stuff and I won't have to worry about the other stuff. And
but
maybe,
you gotta eat shit. You gotta pay your dues.
there's
I want to
somewhere-
write. I want to be a writer. I've been at it for the 14 years now. Oh God, it's 14 years. But I'm at the part where I can sometimes do writing. I built my own framework. I learned code to do it. I don't want to learn code. I don't want to be a programmer. And now all my clients want me to be this big tech nerd. I'm not that guy. I just want to write games, right?
Speaking on that, I'm just curious. So if I do want to focus on my writing and my art, how much programming should I learn to compensate for writing?
Just enough.
The amount you need. Yeah. Yeah. The
no
amount
more.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
So-
what is that?
And so the way I did it was at YTV. I mentioned they hired me as a game developer, and I'd never built a game in my entire life, right? So this is a rare thing. They said you gotta make a game for us in a week. Go for it. And so I was like, yeah, I don't know how to make a game, but I didn't tell them that. What I knew how to do. This is in Flash. It wasn't even in Flash. Oh my God! It was what was the stupid thing before Flash?
Macromedia.
No, not Shockwave. Director. It was in Director. I knew how to use Director based on one class I took. That class that Jimmy said, when are we ever going to use this? That was the one class that got me my job. So I didn't know how to use Flash, and just for my job interview, I took a thing I had made in that class and I made it in Flash and brought it in and got hired based on the strength of that thing, right? So I said, make a game. Here's what I knew how to do. I knew how to do a mouse rollover on a thing. I knew how to click and make the playhead go to a different labeled frame. Right? Oh, and I knew how to play a sound on user input. Make a game, they said. So here's one thing I didn't know how to do, and I knew that it would be the key to unlocking all kinds of crazy stuff. I didn't know how to pull a random number, but I knew that if I could pull a random number, man, I can do dice rolls. I can make the game look like I put a lot of effort to it, but I haven't, and it's just procedural. So I thought, okay, by Friday, I'm going to learn how to pull a random number in Flash. I'm going to build a game based on everything else I know how to do. So I made a game. And then the next week, they're like, cool, make another game. You got till Friday. So
then now armed with my newfound knowledge of how to pull a random number, I was like, what else don't I know how to do? So I picked one thing, and I iterated, and I iterated, and I iterated, and by the third year that I was there, learning how to program on the job, secretly, I knew everything I would need to know to make games on my TV in 15 years.
But holding that thought.
Yeah.
But
Just one thing. We actually have about 5 minutes.
All right, just gonna finish that thought. I guess you're looking at it kind of the wrong way. In terms of, you don't want to look at it as, well, then I have to work at a job for 3 years to get where I need to go. The point here is you should be more like, okay, what are you trying to do? So basically, you've got your writing, you've got a little bit of art. If you've got a game in mind, trim it down. Trim it to like one level, I don't know, or like a WarioWare level, it doesn't matter. And at that point, you should be able to find just enough code or an example or something in one of these tools that will let you build just that and start there. Because if you're like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to program to build this game, right? You want to basically have programming solving the problem. You want to understand what problem you're trying to solve. I absolutely hate when people kind of go and say, I'm going to learn C#, because programming is a black hole unto itself. You could spend 30 years learning how to program, no joke. You have nothing to show for it other than the knowledge of how to program. So that's the black hole that people don't realize, and programmers love that, right? Like, I don't understand this myself, but programmers like nothing more than, what's the new programming language that will further abstract C#? It's like, I just don't care. But again, what'll happen is if you don't realize that about programming, you're going to go, well, like anything else, I want to learn how to do this, so I'm going to get a book on this, right? Or I'm going to go to a website on this. You don't want to go to a programming website. You want to know what is the problem you're trying to solve, that you whittled it down to such an easy problem, at least the easiest problem that you can think of to solve, right? That you need to do programming for. So you're like, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I need to build a room to make this, whatever this is you've got. I need to make a room. The room's going to have some notes in it. Right? Because you're a good writer, so you're probably gonna the room will have notes on the walls. So like, okay, so I need a tool, we're gonna walk around in 3D, hopefully not, try to stay 2D, but you're like, hey, I have to have 3D. You got your minimum requirement, look at some of these tools, be like, okay, Unity, Asset Store, ask some questions, right? Okay. And then at some point you'll be programming without realizing it. The number of people I talk to who are like, I'm not a programmer, is amazing. When I'm like, what have you built? And I'm like, I'm sure if you talk to Cactus, did Hotline Miami, he said, are you a programmer? He's like, no, which is helping no one. At some point, you become a programmer without realizing it, and you alluded to that in your...
Yeah, a lot of the time it's more about the logical concepts behind it than it is about a particular language. And when people ask, well, what's a good programming language to learn for beginners? Or, what language should I learn? Like you said, I always think it's the wrong question. The question is, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And if you sit down and say, I'm going to learn how to program, without having an idea of what problem you want to solve, one of two things is going to happen. Thing number one is you get really frustrated and quit. Thing number two is you learn things that don't help you solve your problem. So.
Which hammer should I learn? Instead of which house am I going to build?
To give you an idea, this will blow programmers' minds. Do you care about variables?
Well,
no, only if they solve your problem. So you don't care about variables. Do you care about scope? No, you don't care about scope until it becomes a problem. So basically, there's a lot of stuff where you're like, I got to learn classes. Do you? No. Right? Do you even need to build a class? No. Right? Until you have to. And again, programmers never present it that way. They're like, here's a good book. It'll introduce you like it has int I equals 1. And you have a for loop. And all this, honestly, you'll be like, okay, you could spend 2 weeks and be like, I'm not sure how this relates to what I want to do, but I'm sure it will eventually. It doesn't eventually.
Get a cookbook. Cookbook's even better. Cookbook is like, here's the thing I want to do. Cool, I'll look it up. There's how I do it. Here's the other thing I want to do. Look up. Cool, that's how I do it.
And most programmers will tell you have to learn all of that about programming. They don't.
No.
Oh god.
You have to learn all about brains.
No. Sorry. And try writing a game with no words in it. You want to be a good writer? Yeah, seriously, write one language.
All right. Sorry to
George,
kick you
take
guys
us
off.
out.
Yeah, but we are out of time.
Give me a Game Boy.
That's all. Well, first of all, on behalf of the Game Makers Union, I'd like to thank all three of you for coming down to Checkpoint and being our guest speakers. So everybody give them a hand.
And if everyone can give a hand to Jordan for organizing tonight.
So we're going to do our final set of raffle tickets. This is your last chance within the next few seconds to go buy another ticket if you
There's
want.
no tickets left. I looked. There's
Okay. No, nobody? All right.
Nobody, George. Just do it.
All right. So first off, we're going to raffle Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds, whether you have a 3DS or not. So,
damn it!
I get a drum roll, please. Okay, the winning numbers are 0, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 1.
Oh my He gets it, man. That was
He
the
gets
rule.
it.
He gets
He
it.
does get it.
All right, yay!
And of course, it's really minute.
Says he's unluckiest person alive.
Okay. So the final Super Mega drum roll for the Nintendo 3DS XL. Again, courtesy of Nintendo Canada. So is that game. Come on, everybody, drum roll. I can't hear you. Come on. Okay. The winning number is 0, 5, 2, 6, 2, 5, 1. Yes. Yep. And don't forget, if you buy another game and register the game and that on the Nintendo websites, they'll give you Pokemon X and Y. Cool. Nice. Yep. Well, thanks for everybody who paid for a raffle ticket, and also just because all of you guys are awesome for showing up tonight, everybody who is here will get a
car.
Free...
No.
I only wish. Everybody here will get a free 1 gigabyte USB key, courtesy of the Yorkdale Microsoft Store. So you guys can get that on your way out. And I actually have notes here because I want to make sure I say everything. Okay, so who here enjoyed tonight? Woo!
That's what we're here though.
Okay, who here was incredibly inspired by everything that happened tonight? Who here feels like they're just ready to make a game and turn it out right now? Yeah! Really? That's great. I just wanted to say that that's all great. I'm really glad that everybody here has enjoyed the event and was inspired. The Game Makers Union prides itself on trying to make a community at Ryerson that makes games and tries to teach people how to make games and just has fun as well, and holds big events like this, and just have a big community. We do meetings right now twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 9, so at this exact time right now. And we do all sorts of things. We teach people how to make games, we make games ourselves, and we also try to support people who want to make games. We are also doing a project right now which is a collaborative game, so people want to come in and sort of collaborate or learn how to collaborate, or how to have skills so that they can collaborate with the game. We totally do that. And finally, I'd like to also introduce the executives this year for the Game Makers Union, which is myself as the external VP, as well as Ian Estagis right there as our president, Zach Harris, who is our internal VP, and Dante Camarena, who is the educational officer. Who, come on, guys, raise your hand or stand up or do something.
I just fix other people's bugs. That's all I do.
Yes, he's fixed a lot of my games bugs as well. He's really great. Everybody is welcome to look at our website or go to our Facebook group to sort of find out more about us and when we meet. We will be meeting during the summer, so even though the semester is ending very soon, we will be meeting. As well. Our business cards are right there, and everybody is welcome to go to our website, go to our Facebook group.
And please check out like TOJam and Dayton Thinking Games and Untold Entertainment. Yeah, I mean, check out the website. You owe them at least that
I
much.
will get into that, but
Yeah.
thank you, Dante. Yes. Also check out Cecily Carver's Dayton Thinking Games, Ryan's Untold Entertainment, Jim's TOJam, when that happens in a few weeks. Also, the TOJam's website, it has Space Invaders on it.
Yeah.
JavaScript, HTML4, mobile compatible.
So I'd like to thank our exec team for being awesome this year. I'd like to thank everybody who has helped me set up today, because that was really, really invaluable. I'd like to thank people who aren't here right now, Richard Lockman, Ramona Pringle, Will Nowak, Ashley Lewis, and Jessica Hosam, who were really integral to getting this space and making sure that I didn't have to go through the trouble, as much trouble I did last year trying to get a space for this event. I'd also like to thank Emily Chow at the Yorkdale Microsoft Store, Matt Ryan from Nintendo Canada, who are really integral at getting us the swag and prizes that we use at this event, like the USB keys you're going to get, the gift cards you got, the Nintendo Canada game and 3DS, as well as Ian for supplying the Steam games, which talk to him if you want a Steam game, so you can sort of set up how to get that. And finally, I'd like to thank Cecily Carver, Henson Creighton, and Jim McGinley for being such awesome guests.
Again? Oh, God damn it.
What? You guys deserve the extra thanks.
Fuck.
You guys deserve all the thanks. So give them another hand.
Oh, can we also thank our speakers tonight, because they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Yay. I'd also like to thank every single one of you who came and to this event, because I've been sort of panicking to try and get this thing organized for the last few months, and I'm just like really, really happy when I see everybody just coming here and enjoying it. And I hope to see more of you soon. I hope you guys come to our events and participate in our and everything that we're doing. And hope this is the last. Hope we all can become part of this community here, and we all see each other very, very soon. Thank you very much for coming, and have a good night.